Another late night, huh? Staring at the ceiling, scrolling, hoping something will finally help your mind settle down. Well, you can rest here for a bit. I'll read you 5 stories. Slow, steady, and just eerie enough to keep your thoughts occupied instead of running wild. Let the rain handle the rest. Story 1. My window kept unlocking itself at night. I've always been a light sleeper. Even as a kid, the smallest sound would wake me. A car door on the street, my mom's footsteps in the hallway, the ice maker dropping cubes at 2 a.m. My brain just never learned how to fully shut off, so when I started waking up cold in the middle of the night, I noticed. The first time I was 17. It was early March, that weird in-between season where the days are warm enough to trick you into thinking spring has arrived, but the nights still drop into the 30s. I woke up around 3 a.m., shivering, and realized my bedroom window was open. Not all the way, just a few inches, enough to let in a steady stream of freezing air. I got up, closed it, locked it, and went back to bed. I figured I'd opened it earlier and forgotten. I'd been studying with the window cracked because my room gets stuffy, and sometimes I'd fall asleep at my desk before remembering to close it. No big deal. The second time was 3 nights later. Same thing. Woke up freezing, window open a few inches, lock disengaged. This time I was more confused than concerned. I could have sworn I'd closed it before bed. I remembered checking it, the way I always checked things. But clearly I hadn't, or it wouldn't be open. I mentioned it to my mom the next morning, mostly as an offhand comment. I keep forgetting to close my window, woke up freezing again. She gave me that distracted mom look, half listening while packing her lunch for work. Maybe put a sticky note on it or something. Remind yourself. So I did. I stuck a bright yellow post-it on my windowsill that said, "Close and lock" in thick black marker. Every night I'd see it, check the window, and go to bed knowing it was secure. The window was still open the next morning. That's when the confusion started turning into something else. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at that post-it note, trying to understand. I remembered checking the lock. I remembered pressing down on the latch, feeling it click into place. I remembered seeing the note and thinking, good, done. But the window was open. The lock was undone, and I had no memory of doing it. I live with my mom in a small ranch-style house on a quiet street. It's an older neighborhood, built in the 60s, mature trees, the kind of place where people wave when they drive past and leave their garage doors open during the day. Safe, boring, the kind of town where nothing happens. My room is at the back of the house, facing the backyard. There's a big oak tree about 15 feet from my window, and beyond that, a wooden fence separating our yard from the Hendersons' property. At night, with the porch light off, it's almost completely dark back there. No streetlights, no motion sensors, just shadows and silence. I started paying closer attention. Every night before bed, I'd check the window, not just glance at it, really check. I'd press my hand against the glass, feel the cold from outside, confirm the latch was down. Then I'd take a photo with my phone. Time-stamp proof that the window was closed and locked. For 3 nights, nothing happened. The window stayed shut. I started to relax, started to tell myself I'd been sleepwalking or something, that the problem had solved itself. On the 4th night, I woke up at 2:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I looked at my phone immediately, some instinct telling me to document the moment. The window was open. I could feel the cold air on my face, hear the rustle of the oak tree's branches in the wind. The curtains were swaying gently, pushed by the breeze. And the lock I had checked, photographed, confirmed, was undone. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just lay there in the darkness, staring at that open window, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Someone had opened it. Someone had to have opened it. Windows don't unlock themselves. Latches don't disengage on their own, which meant someone had been in my room while I was sleeping, or someone was still there. That thought hit me like ice water. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and swept it across my room. Closet door, closed. Under the desk, empty. The corners, nothing. I was alone, but I didn't feel alone. I got up and closed the window, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the latch. I pulled the curtains shut. Then I sat on my bed with my back against the wall, flashlight still on, and I waited for morning. I didn't sleep again that night. I just sat there watching my window, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. But when the sun finally came up and I worked up the courage to look outside, I saw something that made my blood freeze all over again. There were footprints in the soft dirt beneath my window, fresh ones, leading from the fence across the yard, right up to where someone would have to stand to reach in, and leading away again. Someone had been there. Someone had opened my window from the outside, stood in my backyard in the middle of the night, and then walked away. And I had no idea why. I showed my mom the footprints before she left for work. She stood at the back door in her scrubs, coffee in hand, and stared at them for a long moment. I watched her face, waiting for the fear to register, waiting for her to understand. Could be the meter reader, she said finally, or someone cutting through the yard. Kids do that sometimes. At 3 a.m., right up to my window. She didn't have an answer for that. Her jaw tightened, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Concern, maybe, or the beginning of it. But she was already running late, already thinking about the 12-hour shift ahead of her, and I could tell she didn't want to deal with this right now. "I'll call the non-emergency line when I get to work," she said. "Ask them to do a drive-by tonight, and we'll get a better lock for that window this weekend, okay? One of those bar things that wedges in the track." She kissed my forehead and left. I stood at the back door for a long time after her car pulled away, staring at those footprints. They were clear in the morning light, work boots, maybe size 10 or 11, deep impressions that meant someone heavy, someone real. I took pictures, documented everything. Then I went to school and spent the entire day feeling like I was going to throw up. That night, I didn't sleep in my room. I told my mom I wanted to watch TV in the living room, and I stayed on the couch with every light in the house on. She didn't push back. I think she was more worried than she'd let on. The police did a drive-by around 11 p.m. I watched their cruiser roll slowly past, spotlight sweeping across our yard, and then they were gone. That was it. That was all the protection we got. I made myself go back to my room the next night. I couldn't sleep on the couch forever. And besides, we'd bought the window lock, a metal bar that fit into the track, impossible to open from the outside. My mom had installed it herself, testing it 3 times to make sure it held. "No one's getting through that," she'd said, satisfied. "Try not to worry, baby. It was probably nothing." I wanted to believe her. I wedged the bar into place, checked it twice, and climbed into bed. The house was quiet. The wind had died down, and the oak tree outside my window stood motionless against the night sky. I left my curtains open. I wanted to see if anything moved out there. I don't know what time I fell asleep, but I know exactly when I woke up. 2:51 a.m. The window was closed. The bar was still in place. For one sweet, relieved moment, I thought it had worked. Then I heard it, a soft tap, right against the glass. I froze. My whole body went rigid, every muscle locking up. The tap came again, deliberate, rhythmic. Tap, tap, tap. Like someone knocking, like someone asking to be let in. I turned my head slowly, terrified of what I'd see. There was a face in my window, just a shape at first, pale, featureless, pressed close to the glass. Then my eyes adjusted, and I could make out details. A man, older, maybe 40s or 50s, stubble on his jaw, eyes that caught the faint moonlight and reflected it back, fixed on me with an intensity that made my stomach turn. He was smiling. I screamed. The sound ripped out of me before I could stop it, and the face disappeared, just dropped away, like he'd stepped back into the darkness. I heard footsteps, heavy and fast, and then nothing. Just the pounding of my own heart and my mom's voice in the hallway, asking what was wrong. She called 911 this time. Really called, not just the non-emergency line. 2 officers showed up within 10 minutes. They searched the yard, the fence line, the alley behind our property. Found fresh footprints again, same boots, same size, but no one. Whoever he was, he'd vanished. "Do you have any idea who it might be?" one of the officers asked. He was older, tired looking, the kind of cop who'd seen too much to be surprised by anything. "Ex-boyfriend? Someone from school giving you trouble?" "No, I don't. I've never seen him before." They took my statement, promised to increase patrols in the area, gave my mom a card with the number for victim services and told us to call if anything else happened. Something else happened. The next night, I found something on my windowsill, a folded piece of paper tucked into the corner of the frame where the window met the track. I don't know how he got it there. The bar was still in place, the window still locked. But there it was. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside, written in careful block letters, "You look so peaceful when you sleep." I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning, my vision tunneling down to that single sentence. Those 7 words that meant he'd been watching me sleep, close enough to see my face, to study me, to decide that I looked peaceful. How many nights, how many times had he stood at my window watching before I ever noticed? Before the window started unlocking itself? My mom called the police again. They came, took the note as evidence, dusted my windowsill for prints. Found nothing usable, too many smudges, too much contamination. They suggested we stay somewhere else for a few nights. Suggested we consider a security system. We couldn't afford a security system. We couldn't afford to stay somewhere else. We were a single mom and a teenager in a 2-bedroom house, living paycheck to paycheck. Running away wasn't an option. So we stayed. We bought more locks. We started sleeping with a baseball bat next to the bed, and I started keeping watch. Every night, from 2 to 4 a.m., I sat in my dark bedroom with my phone in one hand and that bat in the other, staring at my window, waiting for that face to appear again. It took 5 nights, but when he came back, I was ready. Those 5 nights of waiting were their own kind of torture. Every creak of the house made me flinch. Every shadow outside my window made my heart stutter. I'd sit there in the dark for hours, exhaustion pulling at my eyelids, fighting to stay awake because falling asleep meant being vulnerable, being watched. My grades started slipping. Teachers noticed the dark circles under my eyes, the way I'd zone out in class, the homework I stopped turning in. My mom noticed too, but she didn't know what to do. She'd already taken extra shifts to pay for the locks, the motion sensor light we'd installed above the back door. She couldn't afford to stay home with me. Couldn't afford to do much of anything except work and worry. I started researching, spent hours online reading about stalkers, about peeping toms, about the psychology of men who watch women through windows. Most of what I found terrified me more than it helped. These men escalate, the article said. They start with watching, then progress to contact, then to entry. The window is just the beginning. They want to get inside. I bought a cheap security camera online, one of those little wireless ones you can control from your phone. Set it up on my dresser, aimed at the window, and connected it to an app that would alert me if it detected motion. It wasn't much, but it was something. A way to see him even if I fell asleep. A way to have proof. The 5th night started like all the others. Mom went to bed around 10. I waited until I heard her breathing even out, then took up my position in the dark corner of my room where I could see the window, but hopefully couldn't be seen from outside. The bat was across my knees. My phone was in my hand, camera app open, motion alerts on. The hours crawled by. Midnight, 1, 2. At 2:34 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I looked at the screen. The camera feed showed my window, grainy in the low light, but clear enough. And there, just visible at the edge of the frame, was a shape. A figure, standing in the darkness outside, so still it could have been a shadow. Then it moved. He stepped closer to the window, into the frame. I could see him clearly now, the same man from before. Same stubble, same build, same dead-eyed stare that made my skin crawl. He was wearing dark clothes, a hoodie pulled up over his head. His hands were at his sides. He was just standing there, looking in. My finger hovered over the emergency call button. Every instinct screamed at me to press it, to get help, to end this. But something made me hesitate. The police had come before. They'd searched, found nothing, left. By the time they arrived tonight, he'd be gone again. Another set of footprints. Another useless report. I needed more. I needed something that would make them take this seriously. I started recording. He stood there for almost 3 minutes, just watching. I couldn't tell if he could see me in the dark corner. Couldn't tell if he knew I was awake. His face was expressionless, but there was something hungry about the way he looked at my window. Something patient. Then he reached into his pocket. I tensed, ready to run, ready to scream. But he didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a piece of paper, another note. He unfolded it slowly, deliberately, and pressed it against the glass so I could read it. I know you're watching me too. My blood turned to ice. He knew I was awake, knew I was recording, knew I was sitting there in the dark trying to catch him, and he didn't care. It was part of the game for him, part of the fun. He smiled, that same horrible smile from before, and then he did something that made me want to throw up. He blew me a kiss. I couldn't take it anymore. I shot to my feet, grabbed the bat, and screamed at the top of my lungs. Get away from my window. I'm calling the police. He didn't run. He just stood there, watching me scream, that smile never wavering. Then, slowly, he raised one finger to his lips. Shh. The motion light clicked on. Footsteps in the hallway. My mom, waking up, calling my name. And finally, he moved. Stepped back from the window. Turned. Disappeared into the darkness beyond the fence. By the time my mom burst into my room, he was gone. But I had the video. The police came within 15 minutes this time. I showed them the footage, showed them the note still pressed against my window, showed them everything. The officer who watched the video, a younger woman, not the tired one from before, went pale. We need to escalate this, she said to her partner. This isn't just trespassing anymore. They took my phone as evidence, promised to have detectives look into it, to run the footage through facial recognition to canvass the neighborhood. They asked if we had anywhere else we could stay. My sister's, my mom said. She looked 10 years older than she had a week ago. In Millbrook, we can go there. Do it tonight. Don't tell anyone where you're going. We packed bags in 20 minutes, threw everything into the car and drove through the empty streets, checking the mirrors every few seconds like he might be following. He wasn't. At least I didn't see him. Aunt Teresa's house was an hour away, a small Cape Cod in a subdivision that all looked the same, the kind of place where you could disappear into the sameness. She met us at the door in her bathrobe, eyes wide with worry, and didn't ask questions, just pulled us inside and locked the door behind us. I thought we were safe there. I thought running would be enough. 2 days later, I found another note. It was tucked under the windshield wiper of my mom's car, parked in Aunt Teresa's driveway. Same block letters, same careful handwriting. Did you really think I wouldn't find you? He'd followed us. He knew where we were. And there was a second line, written smaller, almost like an afterthought. Your aunt should really lock her basement window. We found the basement window unlocked. Not open, just unlocked. The latch turned to the side like someone had tested it and decided to leave it that way. A message, a promise of what he could do whenever he wanted. Aunt Teresa called 911 while my mom and I stood in the basement, staring at that window. It was small, maybe 2 feet by 2 feet, set high in the concrete wall. An adult could fit through it if they tried. And based on the smudged handprint on the glass, fresh, still slightly damp from the morning dew, someone had definitely tried. "He was here," I whispered. "He was inside." My mom grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the stairs. "We're not staying down here. Come on, now." The police arrived faster this time. Word had spread through whatever system cops used to communicate. The girl with the stalker, the one who'd fled across county lines and been found anyway. They sent 4 officers, then 2 detectives, then a crime scene tech who dusted the basement window for prints. They found some. Clear ones, good ones, the kind that could be run through a database. For the first time since this started, someone told us they had a real lead. "We're going to find him," the lead detective said. Her name was Reyes, and she had the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that made me want to believe her. With prints this clean, if he's in the system, we'll have a name by morning. They set up a patrol outside Aunt Teresa's house. 2 officers in a cruiser parked at the curb, watching. It should have made me feel safe. It didn't. He'd gotten past police before. He'd found us when no one was supposed to know where we were. A car on the street wasn't going to stop him. That night, none of us slept. We sat in the living room with every light on, the TV playing something none of us watched, jumping at every sound. The officers outside checked in every hour, shining their flashlights around the property, giving us thumbs up through the window. All clear, all quiet. At 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text message. "The police can't watch you forever." I showed my mom. She showed the officers. They traced the number. A burner phone. Untraceable. Probably bought with cash at a gas station. Another dead end. But the prints weren't a dead end. Detective Reyes called at 7 a.m. I was still awake, running on adrenaline and fear, when my mom answered and put it on speaker. "We got a match," Reyes said. "Name's Donald Vickers, 52 years old. He's got a history, peeping charges in 2 states, restraining orders from 3 different women, did 18 months for breaking and entering back in 2015. He's a registered sex offender. Should have been on our radar, but he moved into your area 6 months ago and never updated his address." Donald Vickers. The name felt strange in my head, too ordinary for the monster who'd been haunting my window. I'd imagined something darker, something that sounded like what he was. But he was just a man, a middle-aged man with a record and a sickness and my face in his mind. "Where is he?" my mom asked. Her voice was shaking. "That's the problem. His last known address is an apartment on Garrison Street, but he hasn't been there in weeks. Landlord says he stopped paying rent, cleared out most of his stuff. We're looking, but you don't know where he is." A pause. "Not yet, but we will. In the meantime, I'm going to recommend you 3 stay somewhere else. Somewhere he doesn't know about. A hotel, maybe, under a different name. We'll cover the cost." A hotel, a fake name, hiding like criminals while he roamed free. We checked into a Days Inn 2 towns over that afternoon. Registered under Aunt Teresa's maiden name, paid cash, parked the car around back where it couldn't be seen from the road. The room was small and smelled like industrial cleaner, but it had a deadbolt and a chain and no windows low enough for anyone to reach. I thought we'd finally outrun him. I was wrong. The first night passed without incident. So did the second. By the 3rd night, I'd started to let myself hope. Maybe the police would find him. Maybe he'd given up. Maybe this nightmare was finally ending. At 2:22 a.m., I woke up to the sound of the door handle rattling. Soft at first, testing, then harder, more insistent. Someone was trying to get in. I shook my mom awake. She grabbed her phone, already dialing 911. Aunt Teresa was frozen in the other bed, eyes wide, covers pulled up to her chin like she could hide beneath them. The rattling stopped. Silence. 10 seconds. 20. Then a voice, low and calm, right against the crack of the door. "I know you're in there, sweetheart. I can smell your shampoo." My mom was whispering frantically into the phone, giving our location, begging them to hurry. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. That voice, hearing him speak, hearing words come out of the man who'd been nothing but a shadow and a smile, it made him real in a way he hadn't been before. "You've made this so fun," he continued. "Most girls give up after a while. Stop fighting, but not you. You keep running, keep hiding, keep making me work for it." A soft laugh. "I like that. I like you." Sirens, distant but growing closer. "Sounds like our time's up for tonight," he said. "But don't worry. I'm patient. I've waited this long. I can wait a little longer." Footsteps, retreating down the hallway, a door slamming somewhere, then nothing. The police found him in the parking lot. He was walking toward a van, windowless, rusted, parked in the shadows at the far end of the lot. They ordered him to stop. He didn't. He reached for something in his jacket, and 2 officers tackled him before he could pull it out. It was a knife, 8 inches, serrated edge, the kind you'd use to gut a deer. And in his pocket they found a Polaroid camera and a photo of me sleeping in my bed taken through my window weeks ago. He was smiling in the booking photo too. That same smile, like even in handcuffs he'd won something, like some part of me would always belong to him now. Maybe he was right. Maybe that's the worst part of all. Donald Vickers was charged with stalking, criminal harassment, attempted breaking and entering, possession of a weapon with intent, and a handful of other charges that the prosecutor kept adding as they searched his van. They found more photos in there, not just of me, of other women too. Dozens of them, organized in folders with names and addresses and notes about their routines. Some of the folders went back years. I wasn't his first. I wasn't even close to his first. I was just the one who finally got him caught. The trial took almost a year. I had to testify, had to sit in that courtroom and describe everything while he watched from the defense table, that smile playing at the corners of his mouth like we were sharing a private joke. His lawyer tried to paint him as mentally ill, not responsible for his actions. The prosecution painted him as exactly what he was, a predator who had spent decades perfecting his craft. He got 25 years. No possibility of parole for at least 15 years. I'll be 32 when he's eligible to walk free. Sometimes I count the days, even though I know I shouldn't. Even though I know it doesn't help. We moved after the trial, sold the house, not that anyone wanted to buy it once they heard the story, and relocated to a different state entirely. New town, new school, new life. My mom took a job at a hospital where no one knew us, where we could start over without the whispers and the stares. I finished high school, graduated, started college, dropped out after a semester, started again. The panic attacks made it hard to focus. The insomnia made it hard to function. I'd sit in lecture halls and feel eyes on the back of my neck, turn around to find nothing but bored students and empty seats. I see a therapist now. Twice a week, sometimes more when things get bad. She diagnosed me with PTSD, prescribed medication that takes the edge off the nightmares, taught me breathing exercises that are supposed to help when the fear becomes too much. Some days they work, some days nothing works. I can't sleep with my windows open anymore. Can't even have them unlocked, no matter how hot it gets, no matter how stuffy my room becomes. I've woken up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, gasping for air, because my body would rather suffocate than risk that feeling again, that cold breeze, that presence in the dark. My mom doesn't talk about it much. I think it broke something in her too, the guilt of not believing me at first, of dismissing those early warning signs as forgetfulness or paranoia. She checks my windows for me now, every night before bed, even though I've already checked them twice. It's her way of apologizing, her way of trying to keep me safe when she couldn't before. I think about the other women sometimes, the ones in his folders, the ones who came before me. The police contacted as many as they could, let them know he'd been caught. Some of them testified at the trial. One woman, she must have been in her 40s, broke down on the stand, describing how he'd watched her for months before she moved across the country to escape. She thought she'd lost him. She thought she was safe. She wasn't. He'd kept her folder for 12 years, updating it whenever he could, tracking her from a distance. She was his favorite, he told the detectives, until he found me. There's a network now, an informal thing, just a group chat with some of the other women, a place where we can talk about what happened and know that someone understands. We share tips, security systems, door reinforcements, apps that let you check your cameras from anywhere. We share our fears too, the ones we can't tell anyone else, the way we still flinch when someone stands too close, the way we still check behind the shower curtain even though we know no one's there. I'm 19 now. 2 years since that night in the hotel, since the police dragged him out of the parking lot with my photograph in his pocket. 2 years of therapy and medication and learning to live with the thing that lives inside me now, that constant humming awareness that I'm never really safe, that someone could be watching at any moment, from any window, and I might not know until it's too late. I still have nightmares about his smile, that patient, knowing smile that said he had all the time in the world. That said he enjoyed the chase as much as the catch. Sometimes I dream that I'm back in my old bedroom, 17 again, waking up to cold air on my face. I go to close the window, but it won't latch. And when I look outside, he's there, standing in the yard, looking up at me, smiling. "Did you miss me?" he asks. And I wake up screaming. If you're reading this, I need you to hear something. If you ever wake up and something feels wrong, if your window is open when it should be closed, if things are moved that shouldn't be moved, if you feel like someone's watching, trust that feeling. Don't rationalize it. Don't convince yourself you're being paranoid. Tell someone. Document everything. Fight to be believed, even when no one wants to listen. Because the monsters don't always break down your door. Sometimes they're patient. Sometimes they wait. Sometimes they unlock your window, inch by inch, night after night, until the barrier between you and them is so thin it barely exists at all. I got lucky. The police caught him before he could do whatever he was planning to do with that knife. But not everyone gets lucky. Not everyone gets a warning. Check your windows tonight. Make sure they're locked. And if you wake up cold in the middle of the night, don't assume it's nothing. It might be nothing, but it might be someone standing in your yard, watching you sleep, waiting for the perfect moment. And by the time you see their smile, it might already be too late. Story 2. My laptop restored files I never wrote. The laptop was a refurbished ThinkPad I bought off Craigslist for $200. The seller was a guy named Marcus, who worked in IT for some tech company downtown. He seemed normal enough, mid-30s, polo shirt, the kind of bland friendliness that comes from years of customer service. We met at a coffee shop. He showed me the laptop worked. I handed him the cash, and that was it. 10-minute transaction. I didn't think about it again. I'm a freelance translator, Portuguese to English, mostly, with some Spanish thrown in when clients aren't picky about accents. It's not glamorous work, but it pays the bills and lets me set my own hours, which matters when you're 28 and still trying to figure out what you actually want to do with your life. My old laptop had finally given up. Screen flickering, battery dead, the kind of slow death that machines go through when they're tired of being used. I needed something cheap and functional. The ThinkPad fit both criteria. The first few weeks were fine. I wiped the hard drive, installed a fresh operating system, set up my translation software and cloud storage. The laptop ran smoothly, no issues, no glitches, no signs that anything was wrong. Then I found the folder. It appeared in my documents directory on a Tuesday afternoon. I was organizing files after finishing a project, moving things into their proper subfolders, when I noticed something I hadn't created. A folder labeled Backup Restore with a timestamp from 3 days earlier. I didn't remember creating it. I definitely didn't remember naming anything with that convention. I'm meticulous about my file organization, and random capital letters aren't my style. But computers do weird things sometimes. Maybe some automatic backup function I'd forgotten to disable. Maybe a glitch in the cloud sync. I opened the folder. Inside were hundreds of files. Documents, images, spreadsheets. None of them were mine. The documents had titles like Log Entry 47 and Observations March and Schedule Updated. The images were JPEGs with numeric file names 001, 002, 003, climbing into the hundreds. The spreadsheets had headers I didn't understand. Time, location, duration, notes. My first thought was that the previous owner's data hadn't been wiped properly. That sometimes happens with refurbished machines. You think you've cleared everything, but some fragment remains, buried in a partition you didn't know existed. It was annoying, but not alarming. I'd just delete it and move on. Then I opened one of the images. It was a photo of an apartment building. Brick facade, black fire escape, a bodega on the ground floor with a faded awning. I recognized it immediately because I walked past it every single day. It was the building across the street from mine. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the screen. Coincidence. Had to be coincidence. The previous owner probably lived in my neighborhood. Cities are big, but neighborhoods are small. It wasn't that strange. I opened another image. This one was taken from street level, looking up at a row of windows. 3rd floor, second from the left. My window. My apartment. The photo was dated 6 months ago. My hands had gone cold. That prickling sensation was starting at the back of my neck. That ancient alarm system that tells you something is very, very wrong. I scrolled through more images, more photos of my building, my street, the coffee shop on the corner where I worked sometimes, the laundromat I used every Sunday, and then photos of me, walking down the sidewalk, earbuds in, oblivious, standing at the crosswalk, waiting for the light, carrying groceries up my front steps, sitting in the window of the coffee shop, laptop open, face lit by the screen. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all taken from a distance, all taken without my knowledge. I slammed the laptop shut. My heart was hammering against my ribs, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. This wasn't possible. This wasn't happening. I'd bought this laptop from a stranger 3 weeks ago, a random guy on Craigslist, and somehow his backup files contained months of surveillance photos of me. I opened the laptop again, made myself look, made myself understand. The documents were worse than the photos. Log Entry 47 was dated 4 months ago. It read, "She left for work at 8:15 today, later than usual. Wearing the green jacket, the one with the buttons. She looked tired. I think she's been staying up late. Her lights don't go off until after midnight most nights. I worry about her. She should take better care of herself." I couldn't breathe. I read another entry, then another. They were all like that. Detailed observations of my daily routine, written with a familiarity that made my skin crawl. What I wore, where I went, who I talked to, how I looked. She smiled at the barista today. That real smile, the one that makes her eyes crinkle. I haven't seen that smile in a while. It made me happy. She had a man over last night. I don't know who he was. He left around 11. She didn't walk him out. I don't think she liked him very much. Good. She's beautiful when she doesn't know anyone's watching. More beautiful than when she's trying to be. I wish she could see herself the way I see her. The entries went on for months, hundreds of them, documenting my life in obsessive detail. Someone had been watching me. photographing me, writing about me like I was a character in a story they were telling themselves. And then I remembered. I'd bought this laptop from the person who wrote these files. Marcus, polo shirt, bland smile, 10-minute transaction. He'd sold me his surveillance archive, his obsession with me, packaged in a refurbished ThinkPad, handed over for $200. Had he known the backup would restore itself? Had he wanted me to find this? Or was this some kind of sick game, and he was waiting to see how long it would take me to figure it out? I grabbed my phone, scrolled back through my texts until I found the Craigslist thread, the messages where we'd arranged to meet. His number was right there. I could call the police. I could report him. My phone buzzed. New message. Unknown number. Did you find the files yet? I've been waiting for you to find them. I dropped the phone like it had burned me. It landed face up on the floor, the message glowing against the dark screen. 3 dots appeared. He was typing again. Don't worry. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want you to know how much I love you. I called the police from my bathroom. I don't know why. Some instinct that said I needed to be in a small space, a space with a lock, a space where I could put my back against a wall. I sat on the cold tile floor with my knees pulled to my chest and told the dispatcher everything. The laptop, the files, the photos of me, the text messages. She told me to stay calm, stay where I was. Officers were on the way. They arrived in 12 minutes. 2 of them, a man and a woman, both young enough that I wondered if they'd ever dealt with something like this before. I showed them the laptop, walked them through the folder, the images, the journal entries, watched their faces shift from professional skepticism to something darker as they scrolled through months of obsessive documentation. "And you bought this laptop from him?" the female officer asked. Her name was Chen. She had careful eyes and a voice that made me feel like she was actually listening. 3 weeks ago, on Craigslist, I had no idea. Did he know where you lived? Before the sale? I don't think so. We met at a coffee shop. I never told him my address. But he'd been photographing me for months before that, long before I ever responded to his listing, which meant he'd been watching me first, and the laptop sale was, what? An introduction. A way to make contact. A way to make me find the files? Officer Chen bagged the laptop as evidence. Her partner took screenshots of the text messages on my phone, then gave me a case number and a card with the number for victim services. They told me to call if he contacted me again. They told me they'd look into Marcus, try to track down the number the texts had come from. In the meantime, Chen said, do you have somewhere else you can stay tonight? A friend? Family? I thought about my options. My parents were 3 states away. My closest friend, Jamie, lived across the city in a studio apartment barely big enough for 1 person. I could get a hotel, but the thought of being alone in an anonymous room felt worse somehow, more exposed. I'll figure something out, I said. They left. I stood in my apartment, the apartment he'd been watching for months, the apartment he knew better than I did, and felt the walls closing in. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Different than before. The police just left. 2 officers, maybe 25 minutes total. I hoped they were helpful. He was watching right now. This very moment, he was somewhere nearby, watching my building, watching the police leave, watching me stand alone in my living room with my phone trembling in my hand. I ran to the window and yanked the curtains closed, then the bedroom, then the kitchen, the tiny window above the sink that I always left uncovered because who would be looking in from 6 stories up? He would. He had been. I texted Jamie. I need to stay with you tonight. It's an emergency. She responded immediately. What's wrong? Are you okay? I'll explain when I get there. Please. Of course. Come now. I packed a bag in 5 minutes. Essentials only. Clothes, toiletries, my charger. I left the laptop. The police had taken it anyway. Left my desktop computer too, suddenly paranoid that he might have accessed it somehow, might have installed something, might be watching through my own webcam, even now. The Uber took 20 minutes to arrive. I spent those 20 minutes standing in my hallway, away from windows, refreshing my phone compulsively. No new messages. The silence felt worse than the texts. Jamie met me at the door of her building. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside without a word. We climbed 5 flights of stairs to her studio, and I told her everything while she made tea neither of us would drink. "Jesus," she said when I finished. This is insane. Do you have any idea who this guy is?" "Just his first name. Marcus. The police are looking into it." "And he's been watching you for months? Before you even met him?" "At least 6 months, based on the timestamps." She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, "How did he find you? I mean, you didn't know him. You'd never met before. So how did he pick you, out of everyone in the city?" I'd been asking myself the same question, trying to trace back through my routine, my social media, my online presence, looking for the moment where I'd made myself visible to him. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe he saw me on the street. Maybe I showed up in the background of someone's photo. Maybe..." My phone buzzed. "Unknown number. 3rd one tonight. Jamie's apartment is nice. 5th floor, right? I like the fire escape. Very romantic." I stopped breathing, showed the screen to Jamie, watched her face go white. "He followed you," she whispered. "He's here, right now." We called the police again. Different officers this time, but they took it seriously. Searched the street, the alley, the fire escapes. Found nothing. No one. Just shadows and empty doorways, and the faint sound of traffic from the avenue. "He's probably gone," one of them said. "These guys usually run when they know police are involved." But I didn't believe that. He wasn't running. He was adapting, learning my patterns, my responses, my defenses. Every time I moved, he moved with me. Every time I tried to hide, he found me. And he wanted me to know it. That night, neither Jamie nor I slept. We sat on her couch with the lights on and her laptop open, searching for anything we could find about the name Marcus and refurbished laptops and Craigslist and stalking. We found nothing useful, just forums full of horror stories, women sharing their own experiences with men who wouldn't let go. At 4:17 a.m., my phone buzzed one last time. "You should get some rest. You look tired. I'll be watching over you." And then, a few seconds later, "Sweet dreams." The detective assigned to my case was named Riley. He called me the next morning, voice gruff with what sounded like too much coffee and not enough sleep. The laptop had been examined overnight. They'd recovered everything. Not just what I'd found, but additional files that had been hidden deeper in the system. Encrypted folders, password-protected archives. "The scope of this is significant," he said. "We're talking thousands of files, photos, videos, audio recordings. Some of it goes back over a year." "A year?" My voice came out thin, strangled. "But I've only lived in that apartment for 8 months." A pause on the other end. The kind of pause that means someone is deciding how much to tell you. "Miss Brennan, some of these files aren't of you." The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of Jamie's kitchen counter to steady myself. "What do you mean?" "There are other women in these archives. At least 3 that we've identified so far, possibly more. Different locations, different time periods. The oldest files are dated almost 4 years ago. 3 other women, possibly more. I wasn't special. I wasn't even his first obsession. I was just the latest in a collection, a new addition to whatever sick gallery he was building inside his head." "Who are they?" I asked. "The other women. Do you know who they are?" "We're working on identification now. Some of the images are... They're not just surveillance photos, Ms. Brennan. Some of them appear to have been taken inside residences, inside bedrooms. He let that sink in for a moment. We believe he may have escalated with previous targets in ways that he hasn't with you yet. Yet. That word hung in the air like a threat. What about Marcus? Did you find him? The Craigslist account was registered to a fake email. The phone numbers he's been texting you from are all burners, prepaid, purchased with cash, essentially untraceable. The name Marcus doesn't match any registered sex offenders in the area. Another pause. We don't think Marcus is his real name. Of course it wasn't. Nothing about him was real. The polo shirt, the bland smile, the 10-minute transaction, all of it a performance. A mask he'd worn to get close to me without raising suspicion. What should I do? I asked. I can't go back to my apartment. He knows where Jamie lives now. Where am I supposed to go? Riley gave me the number for a domestic violence shelter that worked with stalking victims. Told me they could help with temporary housing, with security planning, with building a case. He told me to document every contact, every message, every time I felt like I was being watched. He told me they were doing everything they could. It didn't feel like enough. Jamie took the day off work. We spent the morning making calls, to the shelter, to a locksmith, to my landlord explaining that I needed to break my lease due to safety concerns. Each conversation felt surreal, like I was describing someone else's life. This didn't happen to people like me. This happened in crime documentaries, in news articles you scrolled past, in horror stories you told yourself could never be real. Around noon, my phone buzzed. I almost didn't look, almost threw it across the room just to make the notifications stop, but I looked. You've been busy this morning. I like watching you problem solve. You're smart. That's one of the things I love about you. I showed it to Jamie. Her jaw tightened. He's still watching, she said. How is he still watching? We've been inside all morning. I looked around her apartment. The windows were covered. We'd hung blankets over them the night before, blocking any view from outside. The door was locked, deadbolted, chained. There was no way he could see us, unless he could. Your laptop, I said slowly. When's the last time you covered your webcam? Jamie's face went pale. Her laptop was sitting open on the coffee table, screen facing the couch where we'd spent the entire morning, where we'd made every phone call, where we'd planned everything. She slammed it shut, but we both knew it was too late. He's been listening, I whispered. This whole time, he heard everything. The phone buzzed again. The shelter on Westbrook Avenue is nice, very secure. But you should know, one of the staff members owes me a favor. Small world, right? My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. He knew about the shelter. He knew where I was planning to go. He was always one step ahead, always watching, always listening. We need to tell the police, Jamie said. About the webcam, about the shelter, about... And then what? My voice cracked. He heard us call them too. He knows what we told them. He knows everything. Jamie didn't have an answer. Neither did I. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of our helplessness pressing down. Outside, the city hummed with life, traffic, voices, the distant wail of a siren. Normal sounds, safe sounds, but nothing felt safe anymore. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was an email from an address I didn't recognize. Subject line, a gift for you. I opened it against my better judgment. Inside was a single attachment, a video file. The video was 30 seconds long. It showed my apartment, my bedroom specifically, filmed from an angle near the ceiling, near where a smoke detector might be. In the video, I was asleep, sprawled across my bed in a tank top and shorts, covers kicked off, completely unaware. And in the corner of the frame, barely visible in the darkness, was a shadow. A shape that didn't belong. A figure standing beside my bed, close enough to touch me. The timestamp was from 3 weeks ago, 2 days after I bought the laptop. He hadn't just been watching from outside. He'd been inside my apartment. He'd stood beside my bed while I slept, and I'd never known. The message below the video was short. I've been closer than you think. I've always been closer than you think. We went to the police station in person. No phone calls, no emails, nothing that could be intercepted. Detective Riley met us in a small interview room with fluorescent lights that buzzed overhead and a table scarred with coffee rings. I showed him the video, watched his face harden as he saw the shadow standing beside my sleeping body. "He's been inside your apartment," Riley said. It wasn't a question. At least once, probably more. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "How? I always lock my door. These guys find ways. Stolen keys, picked locks, building access through maintenance entrances. If he's been watching you long enough, he knows your routine better than you do. Knows when you're out, when you're asleep, when you're vulnerable." "So what do we do?" Jamie asked. She'd been silent since we left her apartment, her face pale, her hands clenched in her lap. "He's listening to everything. He knows where she's going before she gets there. How do you catch someone like that?" Riley leaned back in his chair. "We set a trap." The plan was simple, at least in theory. I would go to a safe house, a real one, not the shelter he'd compromised, while the police monitored my phone and email. They'd feed false information through Jamie's laptop, which they'd leave open and connected. Make him think I was somewhere I wasn't. And when he showed up, they'd be waiting. "We need you to be bait," Riley said, and I felt Jamie stiffen beside me. "Not literally. You'll be miles away, completely protected. But he needs to believe you're accessible. He needs to think he's won." I didn't like it. Didn't like being part of a strategy that relied on his obsession, on his need to find me. But I didn't have a better option. They took me to the safe house that afternoon, a nondescript apartment in a building owned by the city, used for witness protection in domestic violence cases. No windows facing the street, no name on the mailbox, no connection to me at all. Jamie went home with a police escort and instructions to leave her laptop open, camera uncovered. She'd talk about my fake location, a hotel in Jersey, paid for with cash, registered under a false name. She'd make calls, send texts, create a trail for him to follow. And I would wait. The first night was quiet. I sat in that empty apartment with its bare walls and borrowed furniture, jumping at every sound, checking my phone every few minutes even though I knew no messages would come. Riley had given me a burner, new number, no connection to my old device. If everything went according to plan, Marcus wouldn't even know I had it. The second night, Riley called with an update. They'd tracked activity on Jamie's webcam feed. Someone had been watching, accessing the footage through a server in Eastern Europe. But when they'd traced it further, the trail went cold. Encrypted VPNs, proxy chains, the kind of digital footprint that took serious technical skill to create. "This guy's not an amateur," Riley said. "He's done this before, probably many times." "The other women," I said. "In the files. Did you identify them?" A long pause. "2 of them, yes. One moved out of state about 2 years ago. Says she never knew she was being watched. The other," he cleared his throat. "The other filed a missing persons report 8 months ago. Her sister reported her. She was never found." Never found. The words echoed in my skull, hollow and cold. "You think he..." "I don't want to speculate, but we're treating this as high priority." The third night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the apartment, checked the locks, stared at the walls. Somewhere out there, he was looking for me, following the false trail, driving to a hotel in Jersey that I'd never set foot in. The police were watching. They'd catch him. This would be over. At 2:47 a.m., my burner phone rang. I stared at it. No one had this number. No one except Riley and the two officers assigned to my protection. I answered. Hello? Silence on the other end. Then, soft and familiar. I found you. My blood turned to ice. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but listen to the sound of his breathing, slow and steady, like he had all the time in the world. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? His voice was calm, almost gentle. I've been watching you for so long. I know how you think. I know what you're afraid of. I know you better than anyone. How did you get this number? Does it matter? I'll always find you. That's what love is. Never giving up, never letting go. You're mine. You've always been mine. You just didn't know it yet. I heard something then, not through the phone, through the wall. A soft thump, like a footstep, like someone shifting their weight in the hallway outside my door. You should let me in, he said. It's cold out here. I dropped the phone, ran for the bedroom, slammed the door and shoved the dresser against it, my hands moving faster than my brain, pure survival instinct taking over. The front door handle rattled, once, twice. Then the sound of something metal sliding into the lock. He had a key. Of course, he had a key. He'd probably had a key to every apartment I'd ever lived in. I grabbed the burner phone from where I'd dropped it, dialed 911 with shaking fingers. The operator answered, asked my emergency, but I couldn't hear her over the sound of my own heartbeat, the blood roaring in my ears, the soft click of the front door opening. He's inside, I whispered. He's in the apartment. Please. Footsteps in the hallway, slow and deliberate, getting closer. I'm not going to hurt you, he called out. His voice was so reasonable, so calm, like we were having a normal conversation. I would never hurt you. I just want us to finally be together, face to face, the way it was always meant to be. The bedroom door handle turned. The dresser scraped an inch across the floor. Come out, sweetheart. Let me see you. I backed against the far wall, looked around for a weapon, something, anything. My fingers closed around a lamp, heavy base, metal stem. The door shuttered. The dresser moved another inch. And then, sirens. Distant at first, then closer. The wail of multiple units converging on the building. The pushing stopped. Silence from the other side of the door. Another time then, he said softly, almost sadly. I can wait. I've waited this long. Footsteps retreating. The front door opening and closing. And then nothing. When the police broke down the bedroom door 3 minutes later, I was still standing there, lamp raised, unable to move. He was gone, vanished into the night like smoke. But on the dresser I'd shoved against the door, he'd left something behind. A single photograph, slipped under the gap while I'd been on the phone. Me, standing at the window of the safe house that afternoon. He'd known where I was the entire time. They never caught him. The police searched the building, the surrounding blocks, every alley and rooftop within a half-mile radius. They pulled traffic camera footage, canvassed the neighbors, brought in K9 units to track his scent. Nothing. He'd evaporated into the city like he'd never existed at all. The investigation continued for months. Detective Riley became a regular presence in my life. Phone calls, updates, the occasional in-person meeting to review new evidence or ask follow-up questions. They identified a fourth woman in the archives, then a fifth. One of them had moved to Canada. Another had died in what was ruled a suicide 3 years ago, though the case was reopened after they found her photos in his files. The woman who'd gone missing, her name was Kara. They found her remains in a storage unit upstate. The unit was registered under a fake name, paid for in cash, rented 6 years ago. They couldn't prove it was him, couldn't prove anything. but everyone knew. I think about Kara sometimes, about how she was just like me, going about her life, unaware that someone was watching, documenting, planning. I wonder if she ever found files on a laptop she didn't create. I wonder if she ever got texts from unknown numbers, if she ever felt eyes on her back, if she ever knew how close he'd gotten before it was too late. I wonder if I'm next. That's the thing about surviving something like this. The surviving part never really ends. You're not rescued, and then you're fine. You're not safe, and then you move on. The fear becomes part of you, woven into your DNA, rewriting the way you see the world. I moved 4 times in the first year. Each time I'd settle into a new apartment, a new routine, start to feel almost normal. And then something would happen. A car parked outside for too long. A notification from my phone I didn't remember setting. A sense, bone deep and irrational, that I wasn't alone. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe it was trauma reshaping my brain, making me see threats where none existed. Or maybe he was still out there, still watching, still waiting for the right moment to finish what he'd started. I'll never know. That's the worst part. I'll never know if the shadow in my peripheral vision is real or imagined. I'll never know if the unlocked door was my mistake or his message. I'll never know if today is the day he comes back. I bought a gun, took classes, got certified, practiced at the range until my hands stopped shaking when I held it. It lives in my nightstand now, within arm's reach, loaded. Some people would say that's extreme. Those people have never woken up to a photograph of themselves sleeping. I don't use technology the same way anymore. Every device gets its camera taped over. Every password is changed monthly. I run security scans obsessively, check my accounts for unusual activity, never click links I don't recognize. I've become the kind of person I used to think was paranoid. Now I understand. Paranoia is just pattern recognition when the patterns are real. Jamie and I don't talk much anymore. It's not that anything went wrong between us. It's that I remind her of the worst week of her life, and she reminds me that nowhere is safe. We text on birthdays, send each other articles sometimes, but the easy friendship we had before is gone, replaced by something more complicated, something stained by what we went through together. I started seeing a therapist about 6 months after the safe house. She specializes in trauma, in stalking victims, in people whose sense of reality has been fractured. We talk about hypervigilance, about trust, about rebuilding a life when the foundation has been cracked. She says I'm making progress. Some days I believe her. The police think he's moved on to a new city, new targets. The digital trail went cold after that night. No more texts, no more emails, no more photographs appearing in places they shouldn't be. Maybe he got scared. Maybe the attention was too much. Maybe he found someone else to love. Or maybe he's still watching me from a distance I can't perceive, patient, waiting, letting me think I'm safe until the perfect moment arrives. I got a new laptop eventually. Brand new, still in the box, purchased directly from the manufacturer. I watched them seal it myself. And still, every time I open the file browser, I hold my breath. Wait for the folder that doesn't belong. Wait for the files I never wrote. It hasn't happened yet. But I check. Every single day, I check. If you're reading this, I need you to understand something. We live in a world where intimacy can be manufactured, where someone can watch you for months, learn your habits, memorize your face, fall in love with an idea of you that you never consented to, and you might never know until it's too late. Be careful what you buy secondhand. Be careful what you click. Be careful who you trust with your information, your image, your location. The technology that connects us can also betray us, turning our own devices into windows for people we've never met to peer through. Check your webcam, check your files, check your locks, and if you ever find something on your computer that you don't remember creating, photos you didn't take, documents you didn't write, evidence of a life being lived in parallel to yours, don't dismiss it. Don't tell yourself it's a glitch. Run, because he's still out there. I know he is. I feel it sometimes, late at night, when the apartment is quiet and the city hums outside my window. That prickling at the back of my neck, that weight in my chest, that certainty, irrational but unshakable, that someone is watching. I don't know his real name. I don't know his face. Not the real one. Not beneath the mask he wore for our 10-minute transaction. I don't know where he is or what he's planning. But I know one thing for certain. He's not done. And neither am I. Every morning I wake up is a morning he didn't win. Every night I make it through is another night I survived. He wanted me to be afraid, to shrink, to disappear into the box he'd built for me inside his head. Instead, I'm still here, still standing, still fighting. And if he ever comes back, if he ever finds me again, I'll be ready. This time I won't run. This time I'll be the one waiting in the dark. Story 3. The detour that led me back to my old house. GPS said the drive should take 4 hours. I'd done it 100 times. Pittsburgh to Columbus, straight shot down I-70, the kind of mindless interstate driving where you blink and suddenly 50 miles have passed. I wasn't worried about the route. I was worried about making it to my sister's by dinner, about the conversation we needed to have about Dad's care, about all the things waiting for me at the end of the road. That's probably why I didn't notice the detour sign until it was too late. It was early November, that gray stretch of autumn where the trees are mostly bare and the sky looks like dirty cotton. I'd left Pittsburgh around 2 p.m., later than I'd planned, and the sun was already starting its slow descent toward the horizon. The coffee I'd grabbed at the last rest stop had gone cold in my cup holder. Some podcast was playing through my speakers, something about history, I think, though I wasn't really listening. The construction zone appeared out of nowhere. Orange barrels funneling traffic into a single lane, then an exit ramp I didn't recognize, a sign that said Detour with an arrow pointing into the hills. I followed along with the other cars, annoyed but not concerned. Detours happen. You take the back roads for a few miles, rejoin the highway, move on with your life. But the other cars turned off one by one, left at a gas station, right towards some small town whose name I didn't catch. And suddenly, I was alone on a 2-lane road cutting through farmland, no GPS signal, no other vehicles in sight. I should mention something about myself. I'm 38 years old, and I've lived in 6 different cities since I left home at 18. I don't get nostalgic. I don't dwell on the past. When I leave a place, I leave it completely. Pack up, move on, don't look back. It's not that I'm running from anything, it's just how I'm built. So when the road started looking familiar, I told myself I was imagining things. The curve near the old Miller farm with the split rail fence that had been falling apart since I was a kid. The creek that ran under a narrow bridge, water glinting dull silver in the fading light. The hill that rose up on the left, dotted with those same gnarled apple trees that had been there for as long as I could remember. I knew this road. I'd driven it 1,000 times, in another life, in another version of myself. But that was impossible. This detour had taken me north, away from the interstate. I was in Pennsylvania, maybe West Virginia. Definitely not. The sign appeared on my right, green with white letters, faded but readable. Kellerton, 3 miles. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Kellerton, the town where I grew up. The town I hadn't visited in almost 20 years. The town where my childhood home still stood, as far as I knew, on a dead-end street at the edge of the woods. There was no way. No possible way. Kellerton was in Ohio, 100 miles from where I should be. You don't accidentally detour 100 miles in the wrong direction. GPS doesn't fail that completely. Reality doesn't bend like that. But the sign said Kellerton, and the road said Kellerton, and something in my gut, something old and buried and suddenly very much awake, knew exactly where I was. I should have turned around, should have found the highway, gotten back on track, chalked it up to some bizarre coincidence or a town with the same name. There are duplicate town names all over this country. That had to be the explanation. Instead, I kept driving. The town looked smaller than I remembered. They always do, I suppose. Places from childhood shrinking as you grow, becoming ordinary, becoming manageable. Main Street was quiet. Most of the storefronts dark, even though it was barely 5 p.m. The diner where I'd had my first after-school job was still there, though the sign had changed. The library, the hardware store, the church with the tall white steeple, all exactly where they should be, exactly where they couldn't possibly be. I turned onto Maple Avenue without meaning to. My hands moved the wheel, my foot pressed the gas, but I wasn't making the decisions anymore. Some deeper autopilot had taken over, muscle memory from 2 decades ago, guiding me through streets I'd tried so hard to forget. The house was at the end of Ridgewood Lane, a 2-story colonial, white with black shutters, built in the 1920s and showing every year of its age. My father had bought it the year I was born. My mother had died in the upstairs bedroom when I was 7. I'd lived there until I was 18, and then I'd left, and I'd never come back. Until now. I parked at the curb and stared. The house was dark, no lights in any window. The yard was overgrown, the paint peeling, the shutters hanging crooked. It looked abandoned. It looked like it had been abandoned for years. But I knew that my father still owned it. That he'd moved to the care facility in Columbus 3 years ago, but had refused to sell. That he'd told my sister, in one of his increasingly rare lucid moments, that he was keeping it for me, for when I was ready to come home. I got out of the car. The air was cold, colder than it should have been for early November. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones and makes your breath fog white in front of your face. The street was silent. No dogs barking, no cars passing, no distant hum of highway traffic. Just silence, and the house, and me. I walked up the front path. The porch steps creaked under my weight, just like they always had. The door was closed, the windows dark, but as I stepped onto the porch, I heard something that made me freeze. Music, faint and distant, coming from somewhere inside. A melody I recognized, a song I hadn't heard in 30 years. My mother's lullaby, the one she used to sing to me before she got sick, the one I'd forgotten until that very moment. Someone was in the house. Someone was playing my mother's song. And the front door was swinging open, slowly, like the house itself was inviting me inside. I should have run. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to get back in the car, drive away, pretend this had never happened. But my feet carried me forward anyway, across the threshold, into the darkness of my childhood home. The smell hit me first. Dust and mildew and something else underneath, something faintly sweet, like flowers left too long in a vase. The smell of a house that hadn't been lived in for years. The smell of decay pretending to be perfume. The music was louder inside, still distant, still muffled, but recognizable now. A music box melody, the kind that plays when you wind a little key. My mother had kept one on her dresser, a porcelain ballerina that spun in slow circles while the song played. I'd forgotten about it completely until this moment. Forgotten it existed at all. I moved through the front hall, my footsteps echoing on hardwood floors, thick with dust. The wallpaper was peeling in long strips, revealing plaster underneath that had gone gray with age. Family photos still hung on the walls, their frames crooked, their glass clouded. I didn't look at them. Couldn't look at them. The living room was to my left. I could see the outline of furniture beneath white sheets, the couch where I'd watched Saturday morning cartoons, the armchair where my father had read the paper, the piano no one had played since my mother got sick. All of it preserved, mummified, waiting. The music was coming from upstairs. I put my hand on the banister. The wood was cold colder than wood should be, and for a moment I could have sworn I felt something brush against my fingers. A touch, light and fleeting, like someone greeting me, like someone saying, "Welcome home." I climbed the stairs. Each step brought another memory, unbidden and unwanted. The creak of the third stair, the one I'd learned to skip when sneaking down for midnight snacks. The landing where I'd tripped and split my chin when I was 5, the scar I still carried. The hallway at the top, with its 4 doors, bathroom, my parents' room, my room, and the guest room that no one ever used. 3 of the doors were closed, 1 was open. My parents' bedroom, at the end of the hall where my mother had spent her last months, where she'd died while I sat in the corner, too young to understand what was happening, watching her fade away. The music box was in there. I could see it now, the porcelain ballerina spinning on the dresser, catching the last gray light from the window, still playing after 30 years, still turning as if someone had just wound the key. "Hello." My voice came out cracked, barely a whisper. "Is someone there?" The music stopped. The ballerina froze mid-spin. The silence that followed was absolute, pressing against my eardrums like deep water. I stood in the doorway, paralyzed, staring at that frozen figure on the dresser. And then I heard breathing. Not my own. Slower, deeper, coming from somewhere behind me. From the hallway I'd just walked through, where there had been nothing, where there couldn't possibly be anyone. I turned around. The hallway was empty. All 3 doors still closed, the stairs still visible at the far end, the dust motes drifting in the fading light. No one there. Nothing there. But the door to my childhood bedroom, the one directly across from where I stood, was open now. I was certain, absolutely certain, that it had been closed when I'd come up the stairs. Something was in the house with me, something that moved when I wasn't looking, something that had been waiting here, in the dark, for 20 years. I should have left then, should have turned and run and never looked back. But the door to my old room was open, and there was light inside, a soft, warm glow that didn't make sense, that couldn't exist in a house with no power. I walked toward it, because I had to know, because something was pulling me forward, the same way it had pulled me off the highway, the same way it had guided my car through the streets of a town that shouldn't exist. I stepped through the door. My room was exactly as I'd left it, the twin bed with its blue comforter, the desk where I'd done homework by lamplight, the posters on the walls, bands I'd loved in high school, their edges curling but still intact, my bookshelf, my closet, my life at 18, frozen in amber. And sitting on the edge of the bed, her back to me, was a woman in a white nightgown. Her hair was dark and long, falling past her shoulders. Her hands were folded in her lap. She wasn't moving, wasn't breathing, just sitting there in perfect stillness, like a statue, like a memory given form. I knew who she was before she turned around. Knew it in my bones, in my blood, in the part of me that had never stopped being 7 years old. "Mom?" She turned her head. Slowly. So slowly. And when I saw her face, I screamed. It was her face, but wrong. Like a photograph left in the sun too long, the features bleached and blurred. Her eyes were there, but they were empty, not just lifeless, but hollow, dark pits where her warm brown eyes should have been. Her mouth was smiling, but the smile was too wide, stretched past where lips should end, showing teeth that gleamed white in the impossible light. "You came home," she said. Her voice was my mother's voice, the voice I'd heard in lullabies and bedtime stories. But underneath it was something else, something older, something that had been practicing this voice for a very long time. "I've been waiting for you." I stumbled backward, hit the doorframe, nearly fell. My legs wouldn't work right. My brain wouldn't work right. Nothing made sense. Nothing could be real. But she was standing now, rising from the bed in one fluid motion, that nightgown swaying around her ankles. "Stay away from me." The words came out in a whisper. I meant to shout, but my voice had abandoned me. She tilted her head. That wrong smile never wavered. "But you came all this way. You found your way back to me. Don't you want to stay?" I ran. Down the hallway, down the stairs, my feet barely touching the steps. I could hear her behind me, not running, not chasing, just descending at that same steady pace, like she knew I had nowhere to go. Like she knew the house wouldn't let me leave. The front door was closed. I grabbed the handle, twisted, pulled. It didn't move. Locked, or stuck, or held shut by something I couldn't see. I slammed my shoulder against it, pain flaring through my arm, but the door didn't budge. "You can't leave." Her voice drifted down from the top of the stairs. I looked up and saw her silhouette, backlit by that impossible glow, standing perfectly still. "No one leaves. Not anymore. Not since you left me here alone." "I didn't leave you." My voice was shaking now, cracking on every word. "You died. Mom, you died. I was 7 years old. I didn't have a choice." "But you did have a choice after." She began descending the stairs, one step at a time, unhurried, patient. "You could have come back. You could have visited. You could have remembered me. Instead, you erased me, pretended I never existed, left me in this house to rot." The temperature dropped. I could see my breath now, white clouds in the darkness, and frost was forming on the windows. Intricate patterns spreading across the glass like fingers reaching inward. That's not true. But even as I said it, I felt the lie in my throat. Because I had erased her, had spent 20 years building a life with no room for the past, no photographs on my walls, no stories about who she'd been. I'd told myself it was healthy, moving forward, not dwelling. But maybe I'd just been running. "I remember everything," she said. She was at the bottom of the stairs now, 10 feet away, close enough that I could see the details I'd missed before. The way her skin was too pale, almost translucent. The way her fingers were too long, the joints bending at angles that weren't quite right. "I remember the songs I sang you, the stories I told, the way you cried when they took me away. Do you remember?" I didn't want to. But the memories were coming anyway, flooding back like water through a broken dam. The hospital bed they'd set up in her room. The machines beeping. The way she'd held my hand at the end, so weak she could barely squeeze. The way I'd promised. "You promised you'd never forget me." Her voice was soft now, almost gentle, almost the voice I remembered. "You promised, and then you broke that promise. For 20 years, you broke it every single day." "I'm sorry." The words came out in a sob. I was crying now, tears streaming down my face, and I couldn't tell anymore if I was terrified or heartbroken or both. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I was just a kid." "I know." She reached out, and her hand was cold against my cheek. So cold it burned, so cold it felt like death itself was touching me. "That's why I brought you back, so we could start over, so you could remember, so you could stay." The front door creaked behind me. I turned and saw it swinging open, not to the outside, but to something else. Darkness deeper than night, a void that seemed to pulse and breathe. And I understood then what she was offering, what she was demanding, not just memory, not just acknowledgement. She wanted me to join her, to step through that door into whatever came after, to never leave again. "Mom." I turned back to face her, or the thing that wore her face. "That's not you. Whatever you are, you're not my mother." The smile flickered. Just for a moment, something else showed through. Something angry, something hungry, something that had been wearing this mask for so long it had almost forgotten what it really was. "Then who am I?" it asked. And the voice wasn't my mother's anymore. The voice was something ancient, something patient, something that had been feeding on grief and guilt and forgotten promises for longer than I could imagine. I didn't have an answer, but I had a choice. The front door was open now, both ways. The void on one side, the cold November evening on the other. 2 exits, 2 futures, 1 step in either direction, and everything would change. The thing in my mother's body reached for me again. Those 2 long fingers stretching toward my face, that frozen smile never wavering. And I made my choice. I ran for the real door, the one that led outside, to the cold November air, to a world that made sense. The thing behind me shrieked, not my mother's voice anymore, but something raw and ancient, a sound that rattled the walls and made the floorboards buckle beneath my feet. The void beside the door pulsed, reached for me. I felt it like a physical force, like gravity pulling me sideways, trying to drag me into that endless dark. But I threw myself forward, through the doorway, onto the porch, down the steps. The cold hit me like a wall. Real cold, natural cold, not the supernatural chill of the house. I stumbled across the overgrown lawn, my legs barely working, every instinct screaming at me to keep moving. Behind me, I heard the front door slam shut with a sound like a thunderclap. I reached my car, fumbled with the handle, got inside, locked the doors, jammed the key into the ignition. The engine turned over on the first try, thank God, thank something, and I threw it into drive and peeled away from the curb. In my rearview mirror, the house was dark, silent. Just an abandoned colonial at the end of a dead-end street, exactly what it had appeared to be from the outside. No lights in the windows, no figure on the porch, no sign that anything had happened at all. But I knew what I'd seen, what I'd felt, what had almost claimed me. I drove without thinking, without direction, just putting distance between myself and that place. The streets of Kellerton blurred past, the church, the diner, the library, and then I was on the 2-lane road again, the one that had brought me here, the one that couldn't possibly exist. The sun had set completely now, my headlights cut through absolute darkness, no moon, no stars, just the narrow cone of light ahead and the black pressing in from all sides. I kept checking the mirror, expecting to see headlights behind me, expecting to see that house somehow following, but there was nothing, just empty road stretching back into the void. I drove for what felt like hours. The GPS on my phone was still dead, no signal, no map, just a spinning wheel that never resolved. The gas gauge crept lower and lower, and I started to wonder if this road even had an end. If I'd made my choice too late, and the house had found another way to keep me. Then I saw lights ahead, a gas station, fluorescent and bright, a beacon in the darkness. I pulled in, hands still shaking, and sat there for a long moment, just breathing, just existing, just being alive in a world with gas stations and fluorescent lights and people who weren't wearing the faces of the dead. The attendant inside was a teenager, maybe 17, with headphones around his neck and a bored expression that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. He barely looked at me as I paid for gas and a bottle of water. "Excuse me," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hoarse, cracked. "Where am I? What town is this?" He looked at me like I was crazy. "Cambridge, Ohio." Ohio. I was in Ohio. Somehow, impossibly, I was exactly where I should have been hours ago, on the route to Columbus, just off I-70, as if the detour had never happened, as if I'd driven straight through without stopping. "Is there a town called Kellerton around here?" I asked. "Maybe an hour north?" The kid shrugged. Never heard of it. I wanted to argue, wanted to pull out my phone and show him a map, prove that the town existed, that I hadn't imagined it. But I knew what I'd find if I searched. Nothing. A blank spot where my childhood should have been. I thanked him and left. Sat in my car in the parking lot, drinking water that tasted like nothing, watching the trucks rumble past on the highway. My phone had signal again, GPS working. Everything normal, everything fine, as if the last few hours had been a dream. But my hands were still shaking, and when I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw something that made my blood freeze. A handprint on the back window, small, pale, pressed against the glass from the inside. I twisted around in my seat. The back seat was empty. Of course it was empty. I'd been alone in the car the entire time, but the handprint was there, fading even as I watched, like frost melting in the sun, but unmistakably real, unmistakably hers. She'd been in the car with me, the whole drive, watching from the back seat while I fled, letting me think I'd escaped. And then, as the last of the handprint disappeared, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You remembered. That's all I wanted. Come home again soon. I stared at the screen until it went dark. Then I put the car in drive and headed for Columbus, and I didn't stop until I reached my sister's house, until I was surrounded by light and warmth and the sound of people who were still alive. But I knew, even then, that it wasn't over. The house was waiting. It would always be waiting. And part of me, the part that had never stopped being 7 years old, the part that still remembered her voice and her touch and the way she'd made everything feel safe, wanted to go back. I made it to my sister's that night, late, hours later than I'd planned, with no explanation that would make any sense. I told her the traffic had been bad, that I'd gotten lost. She looked at me strangely, but didn't push. We had the conversation about Dad the next morning. He was getting worse, the dementia advancing faster than the doctors had predicted. He didn't recognize her anymore, she said. Didn't recognize anyone. Sometimes he called for our mother, called for a woman who'd been dead for 30 years, and the nurses had to calm him down. He keeps talking about the house, my sister said. The old house in Kellerton. He keeps saying we need to go back, that she's waiting. I didn't tell her what had happened to me. Didn't tell her about the detour, the music box, the thing that wore our mother's face. What would be the point? She'd think I was losing my mind, the same way Dad was losing his. Maybe I was. But I couldn't stop thinking about what the thing in the house had said. That I'd erased her. That I'd spent 20 years pretending she never existed. It was true, all of it. I'd run so far and so fast from my grief that I'd left her behind completely. No photos on my walls, no stories to tell. When people asked about my parents, I said my mother passed when I was young, and I changed the subject. I'd built an entire life on the foundation of forgetting. And maybe that was why the house had found me, why the road had twisted, impossibly, to bring me back. Grief doesn't disappear just because you stop looking at it. It waits, it grows, it festers in the dark places you refuse to examine. I visited my father that afternoon. He was having a good day, the nurses said, lucid, calm, aware of where he was. When I walked into his room, he looked at me and smiled. You went to the house, he said. Not a question, a statement. I sat down beside him. How do you know? She told me you would, eventually. His eyes drifted to the window, to the gray November sky beyond. She's been waiting a long time. She was angry, I think, hurt, but she just wanted to see you again. That thing wasn't Mom. My voice was harder than I intended. Whatever's in that house, it's not her. He turned back to me, and for a moment, he looked like the father I remembered from childhood. Sharp, certain, the man who'd held our family together after she died. Maybe not. Or maybe it's what's left of her, the parts that couldn't let go. He reached out and took my hand. His skin was papery, fragile, but his grip was still strong. She loved you so much, more than anything in the world. That kind of love, it doesn't just disappear. I didn't have an answer for that. Didn't know if there was one. My father died 3 weeks later, peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by people who loved him. We held the funeral in Columbus, buried him next to the plot we'd reserved years ago. And afterward, when my sister asked what we should do with the house in Kellerton, the house that still existed in legal documents, even if no GPS could find it, I told her to sell it. She tried. The realtor couldn't locate the property. The county had no record of the address. As far as the state of Ohio was concerned, the house on Ridgewood Lane didn't exist. But I know it does. I know because I still dream about it sometimes. The peeling wallpaper, the dusty floors, the music box playing its endless melody. I walk through the front door and climb the stairs and find her waiting for me in my childhood bedroom, and she looks at me with those hollow eyes and smiles that too wide smile and asks if I'm ready to stay. I always wake up before I answer, but the answer gets harder every time. I've started keeping photos of her now, digging through old boxes, finding the pictures I'd hidden away, putting them where I can see them. I talk about her sometimes, to friends, to therapists, to anyone who will listen. I say her name out loud just to hear it, to remember that she was real. Maybe that's what she wanted all along. Not for me to join her in whatever the house has become, but just to be remembered, to exist in someone's mind, someone's heart, instead of fading into nothing. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the thing in the house is still hungry, still waiting, still planning to pull me back into that darkness. Maybe the dreams are its way of wearing me down, making me comfortable, preparing me for the night when I don't wake up. If you're reading this, I want you to understand something. The people we lose don't disappear just because we stop thinking about them. They stay with us, in memory and love and grief. And if we try to bury them, they find other ways to surface. Don't run from your ghosts. Don't pretend they don't exist, because if you do, they might stop waiting for you to remember. They might come looking instead. I still don't know if what I saw that night was really my mother. I don't know if some part of her survived in that house, or if something else just borrowed her face. But I know one thing for certain. She's still there, waiting at the end of Ridgewood Lane, in a house that doesn't exist on any map, in a town that GPS can't find. And someday, I think, I'm going to go back. Not because she's forcing me, because part of me never left, and part of me never will. Story 4. The last customer who entered after closing. The bell above the door hadn't rung in over 2 hours. That wasn't unusual for a Tuesday night. Tuesdays were always dead at the Starlight Diner, especially after 10. The truckers stopped coming through once the weather turned cold, and the college kids from the campus 20 miles up the road only showed up on weekends. By 11, most nights, I was alone with the coffee pots and the hum of the refrigerator case and the distant whisper of cars on the highway. I didn't mind. Some people hate working alone, hate the silence and the emptiness, but I'd grown to appreciate it. There's something peaceful about a diner at night when no one's there. The booths all wiped down, the chrome gleaming under the fluorescent lights, the coffee brewing fresh even though no one's going to drink it. It felt like existing outside of time, like the rest of the world had gone to sleep and I was the only one left awake. My name's Corinne. I was 22 that year, taking a break from college after my sophomore year because I couldn't figure out what I wanted to major in and couldn't justify the debt until I did. The diner job was supposed to be temporary, a few months of saving money, clearing my head, getting my life together. But a few months had turned into almost a year, and I'd settled into the rhythm of it. Open to close, 5 days a week, $11.50 an hour, plus tips that barely existed. The Starlight had been 24 hours when I started, open all night, every night, catering to truckers and insomniacs and people who had nowhere else to go. But business had been slower every month, it felt like. And a few weeks before this happened, the owner had made the call to start closing at midnight. Just until things picked back up, he'd said. Things hadn't picked back up. So now I spent my last hour of every shift alone, counting down the minutes until I could lock the doors and go home. It was fine. I had my routines. I'd refill the sugar dispensers, marry the ketchups, wipe down the counters for the third time. Small tasks that made the time pass. And the diner felt safe, even empty. Well lit, visible from the highway, a phone behind the counter if I ever needed it. That night, the night it happened, rain had been falling since sunset. Not heavy, just a steady drizzle that filmed the windows and made the parking lot lights blur into soft halos. The sound of it was almost soothing, a constant patter against the glass that blended with the hum of the neon sign outside. I'd propped the back door open earlier to take out the trash, and the smell of wet asphalt had drifted in, mixing with the grease and coffee smell that lived in the diner's walls. I was behind the counter, watching the clock. 11:55. 5 minutes until I could flip the sign, lock the door, start my closing checklist. The coffee in my mug had gone cold, but I sipped it anyway. Outside, the highway was empty, no headlights, no trucks rumbling past. Just rain and darkness and the glow of the starlight sign reflecting off the wet pavement. That's when the bell rang. I looked up, already composing the polite rejection in my head. Sorry, we're just about to close. There's a truck stop about 10 miles up that's open all night. I'd said it a dozen times before. Most people understood. The man who walked in wasn't most people. He was older, maybe late 50s, maybe older than that. Hard to tell. He had the kind of face that seemed weathered beyond its years, deep lines carved into his forehead and around his mouth, skin that had the grayish pallor of someone who didn't see much sun. His clothes were wrong for the weather, just a thin button-down shirt and dark slacks, no jacket, no umbrella. The rain had soaked him through. His hair was plastered to his skull, and water dripped from his sleeves onto the linoleum as he stood in the doorway. But he wasn't shivering. That was the first thing I noticed. He was drenched, clearly freezing, and he wasn't shivering at all. "Evening," he said. His voice was soft, pleasant even. "Am I too late?" I hesitated. Every instinct told me to give him the speech, point him toward the truck stop, wish him well. But there was something about the way he was looking at me, not threatening, not aggressive, just intent. Like he'd been searching for something and had finally found it. "We close at midnight," I said. "I can get you a coffee to go if you want. Warm you up." He smiled. His teeth were very white, very straight. "That's kind of you, but I think I'll sit for a bit if you don't mind. Catch my breath." Before I could respond, he was moving, crossing the diner in long, unhurried strides, sliding into the booth farthest from the door, the one in the back corner, beneath the flickering light I'd been meaning to ask maintenance to fix for weeks. He sat facing me, hands folded on the table, that same calm smile on his face. Something was wrong. I couldn't name it, couldn't point to anything specific, but my body knew before my brain did. That prickling at the back of my neck, that tightness in my chest, the ancient alarm system that says danger even when everything looks fine. I glanced at the clock, 11:57. "I'll bring you that coffee," I said, because I didn't know what else to do. I turned toward the pot, and that's when I heard it. The click of the lock on the front door, soft but unmistakable. I spun around. He was still in the booth, hadn't moved. His hands were still folded on the table, his smile still fixed in place. But the door was locked. I could see it from where I stood. The deadbolt turned, the little latch flipped, sealed tight against the rain and the night. There was no way he could have reached it. No way anyone could have. "I hope you don't mind," he said, his voice carrying across the empty diner. "I just thought we should have some privacy." The clock behind me ticked over to 11:58, and I realized, with a cold, creeping certainty, that I wasn't going home tonight. My hand moved toward the phone behind the counter, slowly, trying not to draw attention. If I could just get to it, dial 911, keep him talking while help came. I wouldn't, he said. I froze. He hadn't moved from the booth, hadn't even glanced at the phone. But he knew. Somehow, he knew exactly what I was thinking. It won't work anyway. His voice was still pleasant, still conversational, like we were discussing the weather. Electronics tend to misbehave around me. Something about the frequency, I think. I've never quite understood it. I didn't try for the phone. Something in his tone told me he wasn't lying. What do you want? My voice came out steadier than I expected. A small victory in a situation that felt increasingly like a losing battle. He tilted his head, considering the question. The fluorescent light above his booth flickered again, casting strange shadows across his face. For just a moment, less than a second, his features seemed to shift, the proportions wrong, the angles too sharp. Then the light steadied, and he was just a man again, just a wet, tired-looking man in a late-night diner. I want to eat, he said simply. It's been a very long time since I've eaten. Something about the way he said it made my stomach turn. Not the words themselves, but the hunger underneath them. A hunger that felt older than the diner, older than the highway, older than anything that should exist in a fluorescent-lit restaurant off I-70. The kitchen's closed. I was grasping now, grasping for normalcy, for the script I'd followed 1,000 times. I can make you coffee, maybe a sandwich, but the grill's been off for not that kind of food. He smiled again, and this time I saw it. The wrongness I'd been sensing since he walked in. His smile was too wide. Not grotesquely so, not horror movie exaggerated, just slightly past where a human smile should stop. A few millimeters of difference that made all the difference. Corinne. He said my name like he was tasting it. That's a beautiful name. Old-fashioned. I appreciate old-fashioned things. I wasn't wearing a name tag. I never wore a name tag. The owner didn't require them, and I didn't like strangers knowing my name. There was no way he could know it. No way at all. How do you know my name? I know lots of things. He unfolded his hands, laid them flat on the table. His fingers were long, too long, the joints slightly wrong. I hadn't noticed before. I was noticing now. I know you've worked here for 11 months and 6 days. I know you dropped out of college because you were afraid of choosing the wrong path. I know you tell yourself this is temporary, but part of you is relieved to have an excuse not to decide. The rain outside intensified, drumming harder against the windows. The neon sign flickered, casting the parking lot in stuttering pink light. I felt like the world outside was getting further away, like the diner was drifting into some space where normal rules didn't apply. I know you haven't spoken to your father in 3 years, he continued. I know you cry sometimes when you're closing up, when you think no one can see. I know you're afraid of dying alone. He paused, let those words settle. I know everything about you, Corinne. I've been watching for a while. Why? The word came out as a whisper. Because you're special. He leaned forward, and the light above him flickered violently. Not in the way people usually mean that. Not talented or gifted or destined for greatness. Special in a different way. You're liminal, caught between things, between childhood and adulthood, between staying and going, between wanting to live and not being sure it's worth the effort. My throat tightened. He was wrong. He had to be wrong. But the words hit too close, exposed too much of what I'd never said out loud to anyone. People like you, he said, are easier to take, less tethered, fewer connections holding you to the world. That too wide smile stretched further. It's almost like you're already halfway gone. I broke. I ran for the back door, the one I'd propped open earlier for the trash. If I could get outside, get to my car, drive until I found somewhere with people, with lights, with safety. The back door was closed, locked. I grabbed the handle and yanked, but it didn't budge. I hadn't closed it. I knew I hadn't closed it. "I told you." His voice came from right behind me, though I hadn't heard him move, hadn't heard the booth creak or footsteps cross the floor. "I thought we should have some privacy." I spun around. He was standing 3 feet away, close enough to touch. His eyes, which had seemed ordinary before, were wrong now. Too dark, too deep, pupils that seemed to swallow light instead of reflecting it. The smell coming off him wasn't rain and wet clothes. It was something older, something like soil, like things that had been buried a long time. "The last bus to anywhere left 2 hours ago," he said softly. "The highway's empty. The nearest house is 3 miles through the woods. No one's coming, Corinne. No one's going to save you." The lights flickered again, all of them this time, the whole diner stuttering between brightness and darkness. "But I'm not going to hurt you," he added, and his voice was almost gentle, almost kind. "I'm just going to take something you won't even miss. And when I'm done, you'll walk out of here and drive home and go to sleep, and in the morning you'll feel a little emptier than you did before, a little less present. That's all." He reached toward me with those 2 long fingers. "Most people never even notice what they've lost." The lights went out, and in the darkness, I heard him take a step closer. I grabbed the first thing my hand found, a coffee pot, still half full, lukewarm from sitting on the warmer for hours. I swung it in the direction of his voice, felt it connect with something solid, heard the glass shatter and liquid splash. A sound came from him, not pain exactly, more like surprise, like he hadn't expected me to fight. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I dropped to my knees and crawled, moving by memory through the darkness. The counter was to my left. The supply closet was behind it, and in that closet was a flashlight, a first aid kit, and a box cutter I used to open shipments. Behind me, I heard him laugh, low and soft, almost admiring. "There it is. That's what makes you special. Most people freeze. Most people let it happen." My hand found the closet door. I yanked it open, crawled inside, pulled it shut behind me. The lock was flimsy, just a little latch meant to keep the door from swinging open, not to keep anything out. But it was something, a barrier, a few seconds of separation. I fumbled in the darkness until my fingers closed around the flashlight. Clicked it on. The beam cut through the black, illuminating shelves of napkins and straws and industrial-sized cans of tomato sauce. Normal things, safe things, objects from a world that still made sense. The box cutter was on the bottom shelf, right where I'd left it. I grabbed it, extended the blade, held it in front of me like it could actually protect me from whatever was out there. The metal felt cold in my palm. Real. Solid. "Corinne?" His voice was right outside the door now. I could see the shadow of his feet in the crack at the bottom, blocking the faint glow of the emergency exit sign. "You can't hide from me. You understand that, don't you? I'm not physical the way you are. Doors don't stop me. Walls don't stop me. Nothing in this world can stop me." "Then why haven't you come in?" My voice shook, but the words came out anyway. "If nothing can stop you, why are you standing outside a supply closet?" Silence. The shadow at the bottom of the door didn't move. "Because I want you to come out on your own," he finally said. "It's better that way, cleaner, less traumatic for both of us." "Go to hell." Another laugh. This one had an edge to it, less amusement, more impatience. "I've been to hell, Corinne, several times. It's not as impressive as you'd think." The door handle began to turn, slowly, deliberately, giving me time to watch it move. The latch strained against the pressure. It wouldn't hold. I knew it wouldn't hold. I thought about my mother. I don't know why. I hadn't thought about her in months, maybe years. She died when I was 12. cancer that had eaten through her in a matter of weeks. But I remembered the way she'd held my hand at the end, the way she'd told me to be brave, to keep fighting, to never let anyone make me feel small. The latch snapped. The door swung open. He stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the faint glow of the emergency lights that had kicked on at some point. His shape was wrong now, stretched and angular, like a shadow that had learned to stand upright. Those two dark eyes reflected my flashlight beam without giving anything back. "Last chance," he said. "Come with me willingly, and you'll barely feel it. Fight me, and I'll take more than I planned. I'll leave you hollow, a shell that walks and talks, but has nothing left inside." I thought about the people I'd seen like that. The ones who drifted through life with empty eyes, who laughed without meaning it, who seemed to be going through the motions of existence without actually living. I'd always assumed it was depression or trauma or just the weight of the world pressing down too hard. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was him. Maybe it had always been him. "What are you?" I whispered. He tilted his head, that familiar gesture that seemed almost human but wasn't. "I've had many names. None of them would mean anything to you. I'm old, Corinne. Older than this diner. Older than the highway. Older than the country it cuts through. I was here before the first people crossed this land, and I'll be here long after the last ones are gone." "That's not an answer." "No," he agreed. "It isn't. But it's the truth." He took a step forward into the closet, filling the small space with his presence. The air grew colder. The flashlight in my hand flickered, dimmed, threatened to go out entirely. I am what I am, a thing that feeds on what makes you human, your connections, your hopes, your sense that tomorrow matters. All those invisible threads that bind you to the world. I sever them, one by one, and I consume what's left. He reached for me again, and I drove the box cutter into his chest. The blade sank in easily, too easily, like I was cutting through wet paper instead of flesh. He looked down at the handle protruding from his sternum, then back at me. His expression wasn't anger or pain. It was pity. "Oh, Corinne," he said softly. "Did you really think that would work?" He pulled the box cutter out of his chest. No blood, no wound, just a small tear in his shirt that seemed to seal itself as I watched. "I told you," he said, letting the blade clatter to the floor. "Nothing in this world can stop me." He grabbed my wrist. The cold that shot through me was absolute, not temperature, something deeper, something that froze the marrow in my bones and the thoughts in my brain and the hope in my heart. I felt myself starting to slip away, starting to dissolve into something numb and gray and endless. And then I heard it. The bell above the front door, ringing. Someone else had just walked into the diner. The thing wearing a man's face turned toward the sound. Its grip on my wrist loosened, just slightly, just enough, and the freezing numbness that had been spreading through me receded a few inches. "Anybody here?" A voice from the front of the diner, male, older, with the gravel of someone who'd spent decades smoking or shouting or both. "Saw the lights on. Sign says closed, but the door was open." The door was open. The door that had locked itself, that I'd watched seal shut without anyone touching it. Now it was open. The thing looked back at me. Something had shifted in its expression, not fear exactly, but something adjacent to it. Irritation, calculation. The look of a predator interrupted mid-hunt. "Stay quiet," it whispered. "He'll leave. They always leave." But I could feel it now. The looseness in its grip, the distraction in its focus. Whatever power it had over the diner, over reality itself, it couldn't hold everything at once. The newcomer had created a crack. I screamed. Not words, just sound, raw and primal, tearing out of my throat with everything I had left. The thing's hand clamped down on my wrist again, that terrible cold surging back, but I kept screaming, kept making noise, kept being present, being alive, refusing to slip into the grayness it wanted me to accept. Footsteps, heavy and fast, coming toward the back of the diner. The thing hissed, actually hissed, like something reptilian, something ancient, and released me. I collapsed against the shelves, sending boxes of straws clattering to the floor. A man appeared in the doorway of the supply closet, big, maybe 6'4", with a gray beard and a trucker's cap and the kind of weathered face that said he'd seen some things in his time. He took in the scene, me on the floor, gasping, clutching my wrist. And then he looked at the thing. For a moment, they just stared at each other. "Earl," the thing said. Its voice had changed, colder, more careful. "It's been a while." The trucker, Earl, didn't flinch. "Not long enough. Get away from her. She's mine. I found her. The old rules don't apply anymore." Earl stepped into the closet, putting himself between me and the thing. He was big, but it wasn't his size that made the thing step back. It was something else, something I could feel radiating off him like heat from a furnace, a solidity, a presence that filled the space and left no room for shadows. World's changed. You don't get to hunt here anymore. The thing's face contorted. That too wide smile twisted into something uglier, something that showed too many teeth. "You think you can stop me? You're one man, one old, tired man with nothing left but a truck and a dead wife's memory." "That memory's enough." Earl didn't raise his voice, didn't move, just stood there, immovable, like a wall made of certainty. "She's with me still. Every mile I drive, every sunrise I see, every breath I take, she's there. You can't touch that. You can't even understand it. Something was happening. I could feel it in the air. That same electricity that comes before a thunderstorm. The thing was flickering now, its edges blurring, its shape becoming less stable. The solidity it had shown all night was dissolving, revealing something underneath that hurt to look at directly. "You're making a mistake," it said. Its voice was fragmenting too, splitting into harmonics that shouldn't exist. "There are others like me, hungrier, less patient. If I don't feed, then don't." Earl reached into his jacket and pulled out something small. A photograph, creased and faded, edges soft from years of handling. He held it up, and I caught a glimpse of a woman's face, young, smiling, full of life. "This is what you don't understand. The connections you sever, the threads you cut, they're not weaknesses. They're what makes us strong. They're what makes us real." The thing screamed, not the sound of pain, the sound of something unraveling. It clutched at itself, at the shape it was trying to hold, but the seams were coming apart. The diner lights surged back to full brightness, blinding after the darkness, and in that glare I saw the thing's true form for just an instant. I can't describe it. My brain refused to hold the image, refused to process what I was seeing. There were angles that didn't exist in normal space, depths that went on forever. A hunger so vast and so old that human language had no words for it, and then it was gone. Not slowly, not dramatically, just gone. One moment it was there, collapsing in on itself, and the next the supply closet held nothing but me and Earl and the scattered boxes of straws. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Earl turned to look at me, up close. He was even older than I'd thought, 70 at least, maybe more, but his eyes were kind, tired, but kind. "You okay?" I opened my mouth to answer, closed it, tried again. What was that thing?" "Old," he said simply. "Old and hungry and patient. There's more of them out there than people know. They find the ones who are drifting, the ones who've lost their way." He offered me his hand. "You're not as lost as you think you are." I took his hand, let him pull me to my feet. My wrist still ached where the thing had grabbed me, a deep cold that would take days to fade. but I was alive. I was here. I was still me. "How did you know?" I asked. "How did you know to come in?" Earl was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out that photograph again. The woman with the smiling face, the life in her eyes. "She told me," he said. "Don't ask me how. Don't ask me to explain it. But she told me there was someone here who needed help." He tucked the photo away, patted his pocket like he was saying goodbye. 40 years she's been gone, and she's still looking out for people. That's the thing about love. Real love. It doesn't end just because someone dies. I thought about my mother, about the hand she'd held at the end, about the words I'd remembered in the darkness of the supply closet. Maybe she'd been looking out for me too. Maybe she'd sent Earl through that door at exactly the right moment. Or maybe it was just luck, just chance. The universe aligning in a way that happened to save my life. I didn't know. I didn't think I'd ever know. But standing there in the two bright lights of the Starlight Diner, surrounded by scattered straws and shattered coffee pots and the aftermath of something I couldn't explain, I decided it didn't matter. I was alive, and for the first time in a long time, I was grateful for it. Earl stayed while I called the police. Not that I knew what to tell them. "A break-in," I said. "Someone tried to rob the register. They ran off before they could take anything." The officers who showed up took my statement with the bored efficiency of people who'd heard 100 stories like it. They checked the locks, noted the shattered coffee pot, promised to increase patrols in the area. One of them suggested I shouldn't work the closing shift alone anymore. I agreed. I didn't tell them why. Earl waited in his truck while I finished with the police, engine idling, headlights cutting through the rain that had finally started to ease. When the cruiser pulled away, I walked over and stood by his window. The cab smelled like coffee and diesel and something else. Something warm, like cinnamon, like home. The photograph of his wife was clipped to the sun visor where he could see it while he drove. "What now?" I asked. He shrugged, those tired eyes studying me. "Now you go home, get some sleep, wake up tomorrow and figure out what you want your life to be." "And you?" "I keep driving." He said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. "That's what I do. That's what I've always done. She rides with me and I keep moving, and when something like tonight happens..." He nodded toward the diner. "I do what I can." "How many times? How many times has something like tonight happened?" Earl was quiet for a long moment. The rain pattered softly against the windshield, and somewhere in the distance, a truck horn sounded on the highway. The world going on, oblivious to what had almost taken place. "More than you'd want to know," he finally said. "They're out there, Corinne. The hungry ones, the old ones. They feed on people who've lost their way, who've let go of the things that matter. Most folks never see them, never know how close they came." He looked at me, and there was something in his gaze that felt like a warning and a benediction all at once. "But you've seen one now. You know they're real. That changes things." "Changes them how?" "Makes you a little harder to catch. Makes you pay attention to the things that keep you anchored." He tapped the photograph on his visor. "Find your tethers, kid. The people who matter. The things that make you feel alive. Hold on to them. Don't let go, no matter how tired you get, no matter how much easier it seems to just drift." I thought about my father. 3 years of silence between us. 3 years of stubbornness and hurt feelings and words I'd never said. I thought about my mother. Gone for a decade, but still somehow present in the moments when I needed her most. I thought about the life I'd been living. The drifting, the excuses, the comfortable numbness I'd mistaken for peace. "Thank you," I said. It felt inadequate, but it was all I had. Earl smiled. It was a sad smile, the smile of someone who'd lost too much and kept going anyway. "Thank her," he said, nodding at the photograph. "She's the one who sent me through that door." He drove away a few minutes later. I watched his taillights disappear down the highway, red points of light swallowed by the rain and the dark. I never saw him again. I don't even know his last name. But I think about him sometimes. Out there on the highways, driving through the night, his wife's photograph clipped to the visor, watching for the ones who were drifting, stepping in when the hungry things get too close. I quit the diner the next week, not because of what happened, or not entirely, but because I finally understood what I'd been doing there, hiding, avoiding, using the routine as an excuse not to face the things I was afraid of. I called my father that same day. The conversation was awkward, painful, full of silences and half-formed apologies. But it was a start, a thread, reconnected after too long. I went back to school the following semester, declared a major, social work, helping people who'd lost their way. It felt right. It felt like something my mother would have been proud of. I don't work late nights anymore, not because I'm afraid of empty diners or quiet highways, but because I've learned to value the daylight, the warmth, the presence of other people, their voices and laughter and all the small connections that make up a life worth living. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about what Earl said, about the hungry ones, the old ones, the things that feed on people who've let go of their tethers. I see them now in a way I couldn't before, not literally. I've never encountered another one, and I hope I never do. But I see the people they've fed on, the ones with the empty eyes, the hollow laughs, the sense that they're going through the motions of living without actually being alive. They're everywhere, if you know how to look. Walking through grocery stores, sitting in waiting rooms, drifting through their days like ghosts who haven't realized they're dead. And I wonder sometimes if what Earl did, what his wife did, reaching across whatever divide separates the living from the dead, was enough. If they really drove that thing away, or just delayed it. If it's out there somewhere, hungry and patient, waiting for the next person who lets go of their connections and starts to drift. If you're reading this, I need you to understand something. The things that tie you to the world, your family, your friends, your passions, your purpose, they're not just nice to have. They're not just the frosting on the cake of existence. They're the only thing standing between you and the darkness. Hold on to them, even when it hurts, even when it's hard, even when the easiest thing in the world would be to let go and float away into the gray. Because there are things in the darkness that are waiting for you to let go. I know, I met one. And I still remember the cold of its hand on my wrist, the absolute zero of a hunger that wanted to erase everything I was and leave nothing behind but a shell. It's been 3 years since that night at the Starlight Diner. 3 years of rebuilding, reconnecting, learning how to be present in my own life. I'm stronger now, more tethered, the kind of person that thing would have trouble catching. But every now and then, when I'm driving alone at night and I pass a diner with its lights still on, I slow down. I look inside. I check for customers who shouldn't be there, for smiles that stretch too wide, for figures that don't quite fit in the world they're standing in. And if I ever see one, if I ever find another person caught between the hungry thing and the door, I'll do what Earl did. I'll walk in, because that's what the tethered ones do for each other. We hold on. Story 5. The feeling that someone was standing behind my shower curtain. You know the feeling. Everyone does. You're in the shower, eyes closed, water running down your face, and suddenly you're certain, absolutely certain, that someone is standing on the other side of the curtain, watching, waiting, close enough to touch you if they reached out. It's primal, that feeling. Something left over from when we lived in caves and the rustle in the darkness could mean death. Your body tenses, your heart stutters, and even though you know it's irrational, even though you're alone in your own bathroom, in your own apartment, you can't shake the conviction that if you pulled back that curtain, something would be there. I used to laugh at myself when it happened. pull back the curtain with a dramatic flourish, see the empty bathroom, roll my eyes at my own paranoia. It was almost a ritual, a way of proving to myself that I was safe, that the world worked the way it was supposed to, that monsters weren't real. I don't laugh anymore. My name is Vivian. I was 29 when I moved into the Aldridge Apartments, a mid-rise building on the north side of the city with affordable rent and a view of the parking lot. I just ended a 3-year relationship with a man who'd slowly made me feel like I was losing my mind, questioning my memories, my perceptions, my sanity. The apartment was supposed to be a fresh start, a place that was entirely mine, where I could rebuild myself without someone constantly telling me I was wrong about everything. I'm a nurse, night shift in the ICU, which means I keep vampire hours and my relationship with sleep has always been complicated. I'd get home around 7 a.m., shower off the hospital smell, and crash until mid-afternoon. Then I'd putter around my apartment, watch something mindless on TV, eat dinner alone, and head back to work. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. After 3 years of walking on eggshells, mine felt like the greatest luxury in the world. The apartment itself was fine, nothing special, 1 bedroom, galley kitchen, bathroom with a tub shower combo, and one of those cheap plastic curtains that stuck to your skin if you got too close. The previous tenant had left behind a faint smell of cigarette smoke that I covered with candles and air fresheners. The radiator clanked in the winter. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbor's TV if she turned it up too loud. Normal apartment stuff, nothing that should have scared me. The first time it happened was about 2 weeks after I moved in. I was in the shower after a brutal 12-hour shift, letting the hot water unknot my shoulders when the feeling hit me. That prickling at the back of my neck, that sudden, irrational certainty that I wasn't alone. I opened my eyes, turned toward the curtain. It was opaque, some generic beige pattern, but I could see the bathroom beyond it in vague shapes. The toilet, the sink, the door that I always kept closed because the bathroom got cold otherwise. Nothing moved. No shadows, no sounds, except the water and the distant hum of the building's plumbing. I laughed at myself, pulled back the curtain just to prove there was nothing there. The bathroom was empty. Of course it was empty. But here's the thing. The door was open. Just a crack, maybe 2 inches, but definitely open. And I could have sworn I'd closed it. I always closed it. I stood there dripping, staring at that gap, trying to convince myself that I'd just forgotten, that I'd been tired, distracted, not paying attention. Doors don't open themselves. People forget things. There was a rational explanation for everything. I closed the door, finished my shower, went to bed. The second time was 4 days later. Same scenario. Morning shower, exhaustion, hot water, closed eyes. Same feeling, that unmistakable sense of presence. Same moment of pulling back the curtain to prove I was being ridiculous. The bathroom was empty again, but the bath mat was pushed aside, bunched up against the base of the toilet like someone had stepped on it and shoved it out of place. I hadn't stepped on it. I always stepped directly into the tub from the tile floor. It was cleaner that way, kept the mat from getting soaked. My heart was beating faster than it should have been. I told myself it was nothing. Told myself the mat must have shifted somehow. Maybe I'd kicked it coming in. Maybe the door opening had created a draft. Reasonable explanations, logical explanations. But when I picked up the mat to straighten it, I noticed something else. A wet footprint on the tile. Bare, clear, pointing toward the shower. Not my footprint. It was too big, easily a size 11 or 12, and the wrong shape entirely. The arch was different, the toes more splayed. Someone else's foot had stood on that tile, recently enough to still be wet. I searched the apartment. Every room, every closet, under the bed, behind the shower curtain pulled all the way back. Nothing. No one. The front door was locked, the chain still on, exactly as I'd left it when I came home from work. But the footprint was real. I took a picture of it before it dried, needing proof, needing something tangible to look at later. Evidence that I wasn't imagining things. Evidence that my ex had been wrong about me, that I wasn't crazy, that something was actually happening. I didn't sleep well that day, kept waking up, listening for sounds that didn't come, staring at my bedroom door like I expected it to swing open. It didn't. But that night, before I left for work, I did something I'd never done before. I sprinkled baby powder on the bathroom floor, a thin layer, barely visible, covering the tile from the door to the tub. If someone was coming into my bathroom while I wasn't there, I was going to prove it. And when I came home the next morning, my blood ran cold. There were footprints in the powder, the same large bare feet, walking from the bathroom door to the shower, and then standing there, just standing there, facing the curtain, for what must have been a long time. The powder was pressed deep where the weight had settled. Someone had been in my bathroom, standing, waiting, and then they'd vanished without a trace. I called the police, showed them the photographs, the footprints in the powder, explained the timeline as clearly as I could. 2 officers came, a man and a woman, both young, both polite. They walked through my apartment, checked the windows, examined the locks. No signs of forced entry, the male officer said, writing something in his notepad. You're sure you didn't have anyone over? A friend, maybe, or a maintenance worker? I live alone. No one has a key except the building manager. They exchanged a look. That look. The one I'd seen too many times during my relationship with Marcus, when I'd try to tell someone what was happening and they'd silently communicate that I was being dramatic, hysterical, a woman making mountains out of molehills. These footprints could have been there before you put the powder down, the female officer said gently. Old prints you just didn't notice. Powder can settle into existing residue. They weren't there. I checked. The tile was clean. Another look. More notes. A card with the non-emergency number and a suggestion that I might want to talk to building management about changing my locks. They left without filing a report. I wasn't a priority. Nothing had been stolen. No one had been hurt. Just a nervous woman seeing things in baby powder. I stood in my bathroom for a long time after they left, staring at those footprints. They were real. They were there. I wasn't imagining them. But I could already hear Marcus's voice in my head. You're doing it again, Viv. Making things up. Creating problems where there aren't any. This is why no one takes you seriously. I photographed the footprints from every angle, measured them with a ruler, size 12, just like I'd thought. Documented the depth of the impressions, the way the powder had been compressed under weight. I was a nurse. I understood evidence. I understood that observation and documentation were the difference between being believed and being dismissed. Then I went to the hardware store and bought a security camera. It was a small one, wireless, designed to look like an ordinary phone charger. I set it up on the bathroom counter, angled to capture the door and the shower, connected it to my phone so I could check the feed from anywhere. If someone was coming into my bathroom, I was going to catch them on video. For 3 days, nothing happened. I'd come home from work, check the camera, find hours of footage showing an empty bathroom. The powder I'd reapplied stayed undisturbed. The door stayed closed. I started to wonder if maybe I had imagined it, if maybe the stress of the move and the breakup and the long shifts had finally caught up with me. Then I checked the footage from day 4. The video showed my bathroom, empty and still, timestamp running in the corner. 3:47 a.m. I was at work, in the middle of a code blue, trying to keep a 70-year-old man's heart beating. At 3:47 a.m. in my apartment, the bathroom door opened. No one came through it. The door just opened. Slowly, silently, swinging inward like someone was pushing it. I watched, my hands trembling as the footage continued. The door stayed open. The bathroom remained empty. Nothing moved. Nothing appeared. Nothing made sense. And then the shower curtain twitched. Just a small movement, a ripple in the plastic, like something had brushed against it from the inside. but there was nothing inside. The tub was empty. I could see it clearly through the gap where the curtain didn't quite reach the wall. The curtain twitched again, and then it was pulled back, slowly, deliberately, by nothing I could see. The tub was empty, completely empty, but the powder on the floor was disturbed now. Those same footprints, appearing one at a time, pressing into the white dust as I watched, like someone was walking across the bathroom, like someone invisible was crossing from the shower to the door. The footprints stopped at the threshold. The door swung closed, and then nothing. Just my bathroom, empty and silent. The powder showing footprints that had no owner. I played the video back 17 times, zoomed in, slowed it down, looked for wires or tricks or any explanation that made sense. There wasn't one. The door opened by itself. The curtain moved by itself. The footprints appeared by themselves. Something was in my apartment, something I couldn't see. I didn't go home that day. Couldn't make myself walk back into that space knowing what was there, what was waiting. I called in a personal day and checked into a motel off the highway, one of those places with stained carpets and a front desk clerk who didn't ask questions. I sat on the bed with my phone, watching the live feed from my bathroom camera, and tried to figure out what to do. The footage from that night showed nothing. Empty bathroom, closed door, undisturbed powder. Whatever it was, it knew I wasn't there. It only came when I was home. I called my sister. Elena lived 2 states away, but she was the only family I trusted, the only one who hadn't sided with Marcus when the relationship fell apart. I told her everything, the footprints, the feeling in the shower, the video. I sent her the footage. She was quiet for a long time after watching it. "That's not possible," she finally said. "Viv, that's not... Things like that don't happen." "I know, but I have it on video. You're watching the same thing I watched." "Maybe it's a glitch, some kind of digital artifact. Cameras do weird things sometimes." "The powder was disturbed, Elena. When I went back for more clothes, the footprints were exactly where the video showed them. This isn't a glitch. Something is in my apartment." Another long pause. I could hear her breathing, could almost hear her thinking. "Then you need to get out," she said. "Break your lease. Move. Come stay with me. I don't care. If something is in that apartment, you can't stay there." She was right. I knew she was right, but I couldn't leave. Not yet. Because if I ran away now, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering what it was. Wondering if it was real or if Marcus had been right about me all along. Wondering if I was crazy. I had to know. I had to see it for myself. So I went back, and I waited for it to come. I got home around 7:30 a.m., same as always. The apartment looked exactly as I'd left it. Dishes in the sink, coat over the chair, everything ordinary and undisturbed. The bathroom door was closed. I didn't open it yet. Instead, I sat on my bed with my phone, watching the camera feed. The bathroom was still. The powder I'd left on the floor 3 days ago was scattered now, marked with prints that had accumulated while I was gone. But nothing moved. Nothing appeared. I waited. The morning light crept across my bedroom floor, shifting from gray to gold to white. I heard my neighbor leave for work, her keys jingling in the hallway. The building settled around me, pipes groaning, radiator ticking, normal sounds, safe sounds. I kept watching the screen. By noon, my eyes were burning. I'd been awake for almost 24 hours, running on coffee and adrenaline and the stubborn refusal to let this thing, whatever it was, make me run. I thought about what Elena had said. Break the lease. Move. Come stay with me. Reasonable advice, sensible advice, the kind of thing a sane person would do. But sane people didn't have invisible footprints in their bathrooms. Sane people didn't watch their shower curtains move by themselves on camera. I'd spent 3 years being told I was irrational, oversensitive, disconnected from reality. I wasn't going to run from the first thing I could actually prove was real. I must have dozed off because when I opened my eyes, the light had changed. The bedroom was dim, afternoon shadows stretching across the walls. My phone had fallen beside me on the pillow, screen dark. I picked it up, checked the camera feed. The bathroom door was open. I hadn't opened it. I hadn't left this bed since I got home. But on the screen, the door was wide open, showing the bathroom beyond. The toilet, the sink, the shower curtain pulled closed across the tub. And standing in front of the curtain, facing the camera, were two bare footprints in the powder. Fresh ones, deep ones. Weight settled into them like someone was standing there right now, invisible, staring at the camera, staring at me. The feed was live. This was happening right now, 30 feet away, on the other side of my bedroom wall. I should have called someone, should have run out the door and never looked back. But something was pulling me forward. The same thing that had made me go back to the motel. The same thing that had made me set up the camera in the first place. I needed to see. I needed to understand. I got up, walked to my bedroom door, opened it slowly, holding my breath, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my teeth. The hallway was empty. The bathroom door was open, just like on the camera. From where I stood, I could see the edge of the sink, the corner of the mirror. Nothing else. I took a step forward, then another. The hardwood creaked under my feet, impossibly loud in the silence. The bathroom was 10 feet away. 8, 6. The air got colder as I approached. Not dramatically, not movie cold, but enough to notice. A chill that didn't belong, that seemed to radiate from the open doorway like breath from a freezer. I stopped at the threshold. The footprints were there, just like on the camera. Two bare impressions in the powder, facing the shower curtain. But there was something else now. Something the camera hadn't shown. The mirror above the sink was fogged over. Not completely, just a patch in the center, about head height. Like someone had been standing in front of it, breathing. Like someone was still standing there. I could feel it. That presence I'd sensed in the shower, that certainty of being watched. It was stronger now, almost overwhelming. The air felt thick, charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Something was in this room with me. Something was inches away, close enough to touch, and I couldn't see it. "What do you want?" My voice came out as a whisper. I hadn't meant to speak, but the words escaped anyway. The fog on the mirror shifted, swirled. And then, slowly, like a finger dragging through condensation, letters began to appear. Y-O-U. I stumbled backward, hit the hallway wall, couldn't take my eyes off the mirror. The letter faded, replaced by more. A-L-W-A-Y-S, Y-O-U. The shower curtain moved, not a twitch this time. A slow, deliberate pull, drawing back inch by inch, revealing the empty tub behind it. Empty, except for the water pooled at the bottom. Water I hadn't run, water that was dripping from the shower head in a steady rhythm. Drip, drip, drip. And in the water, I saw a reflection that wasn't mine. A face. Pale, gaunt, with hollow eyes and a mouth that hung open in something between a smile and a scream. It was looking up at me through the water's surface, from somewhere below, somewhere that shouldn't exist. I screamed, threw myself backward, crashed into the hallway wall, scrambled toward the front door. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely work the locks, the deadbolt, the chain, all the protection that meant nothing against something that could walk through walls. I got the door open, ran into the hallway. Didn't stop until I reached the stairwell, 3 floors down, bursting out into the parking lot in my socks, my phone still clutched in my hand. The afternoon sun was blinding after the dimness of the apartment. I stood there gasping, shaking, looking up at my building like I expected to see something in the window. There was nothing. Just glass and brick and the ordinary face of a building that housed something impossible. My phone buzzed. A notification from the camera app. Motion detected. I opened the feed with trembling fingers. The bathroom was empty now. The footprints were gone. The mirror was clear. The shower curtain was drawn closed again, like nothing had happened. But on the fogged glass of the shower door, glass that hadn't been fogged before, new letters were forming. DONTLEAVEME. The words stayed for a moment, clear and deliberate. Then they faded, and the bathroom was just a bathroom again, still and silent and empty. But I knew it wasn't empty. I knew something was waiting in there, had been waiting since before I moved in, would keep waiting no matter how far I ran. And now it knew I'd seen its face. I spent 2 nights at Elena's, sleeping on her couch with all the lights on. She didn't push me to talk about it, didn't try to explain it away this time. She'd seen the footage. She'd watched the words appear on the shower door in real time, letter by letter, written by something that couldn't exist. "What are you going to do?" she asked on the second morning, handing me coffee I couldn't drink. I don't know yet. But I did know. I just wasn't ready to say it out loud. I spent those 2 days researching. The Aldridge Apartments had been built in 1978, originally marketed to young professionals, the kind of place that promised modernity and independence. Over the years, it had aged poorly, changing hands multiple times, rents dropping as the neighborhood declined. There wasn't much online about the building's history, no dramatic fires, no publicized tragedies, no obvious reason for what I'd experienced. But public records told a different story. Unit 4C, my unit, had a history. In 1994, a woman named Margot Ellis had died there. Cardiac arrest, according to the death certificate I found after 3 hours of digging through county archives. She'd been 31 years old, single, lived alone. Her body wasn't discovered for almost a week, found in the bathroom by the building manager after neighbors complained about the smell. The bathroom. Of course it was the bathroom. I found an old newspaper article from the week after her death, a small piece in the local section. Margot Ellis, described as a private person who kept to herself. No family came forward to claim the body. She was buried in a county plot, her belongings disposed of by the state. No one mourned her. No one remembered her. She'd died alone and been forgotten, erased from the world like she'd never existed at all. I thought about the words on the mirror. You. Always you. I thought about the desperation in those final letters. Don't leave me. Maybe it wasn't about me at all. Maybe it was about not wanting to be alone anymore. I went back to the apartment the next day. Elena begged me not to, threatened to call the police, threatened to drive up and physically drag me away. I told her I loved her and hung up. Some things you have to face by yourself. The building looked the same as always, brick and glass and ordinary people living ordinary lives, none of them knowing what was waiting in 4C. I climbed the stairs slowly, key in hand, heart pounding but steady. I knew what I was walking toward. I wasn't going to run anymore. The apartment was cold when I entered. Not just the normal chill of an unheated space, but that same supernatural cold I'd felt before, the cold that radiated from something that shouldn't be there. The bathroom door was closed. I could feel the presence behind it, waiting, expectant. "Margot," I said. The building seemed to hold its breath. "Your name is Margot Ellis. You died here in 1994, in that bathroom." I took a step closer to the closed door. "I found your records. I know what happened to you." Silence. But not an empty silence, a listening silence. Something on the other side was paying attention. "I'm not afraid of you." That was a lie, but I said it anyway. "I think I understand. You died alone and no one noticed. No one cared. And you've been here ever since, waiting for someone to see you." The door creaked, not opening, just shifting, like weight was being pressed against it from the other side. "I see you," I said. "I see you, Margot. The door swung open. The bathroom was dark, though it was midday, and the window should have been letting in light. The darkness was intentional, purposeful, gathered like a held breath. I could see the shape of the toilet, the sink, the shower curtain, still drawn closed, and standing in front of the shower, barely visible in the shadows, was a figure, not invisible this time, not footprints in powder or letters in fog, an actual figure, translucent and gray, flickering like a candle in a draft. A woman, thin and tall, with dark hair that hung limp around a face I recognized from the water's reflection. Hollow eyes, a mouth caught between smile and scream. Margot Ellis, dead for 30 years and still standing in the bathroom where she'd taken her last breath. "You can see me." Her voice was like static, like whispers layered on whispers, like sound trying to remember how to exist. "After all this time, you can actually see me." Yes. No one else could. I tried. I tried so many times. They'd feel me, sense me, but they'd convince themselves it was nothing. They'd leave, and I'd be alone again. Her form flickered, solidified, flickered again. But you kept looking. You came back. Even when you were scared, you came back. I had to know the truth. The truth, she laughed, or made a sound that might have once been a laugh. The truth is, I died on the bathroom floor, and no one found me for 6 days. The truth is, I'd pushed everyone away, convinced myself I didn't need anyone, and I was right. I didn't need anyone until I was dying, and there was no one to call, no one who cared, no one who even knew I existed. The cold was intensifying. I could see my breath now, white clouds in the darkness. Frost was forming on the mirror, on the tiles, spreading outward from where she stood. "I don't want to be alone anymore," she said. "That's all I want. That's all I've ever wanted. Just someone to stay with me." I understood then what she was asking, not just for company, for a companion in death. Someone to share the endless lonely years she'd endured since 1994. Someone who would never leave because they couldn't. "I can't stay," I said softly. "Not like that. Not forever." Her face twisted. The hollow eyes seemed to deepen, the mouth pulling wider. "Then you're like all the others. You see me, but you won't stay. You understand me, but you'll leave anyway." "That's not..." She moved. Fast, impossibly fast, closing the distance between us in a blur of gray and cold. Her hands closed around my wrists, hands that felt like ice, like drowning, like every lonely night I'd ever spent pressed into physical form. "I won't be alone again." Her voice had changed now, layered with something older, something desperate. "I've waited too long, watched too many people come and go. You're the first one who actually saw me, the first one who said my name." The cold was spreading up my arms, into my chest. I could feel myself fading, feel my connection to the living world growing thin. She was pulling me toward whatever place she existed in, that gray space between life and death where she'd been trapped for decades. I thought about Marcus, about the way he'd made me feel small, invisible, like I barely existed at all. About the years I'd spent shrinking myself, hiding myself, becoming less and less present in my own life. And I realized something. I knew what it felt like to be erased. "Margot." I forced her name out through chattering teeth. "I'm not leaving because I don't care. I'm leaving because I'm alive, because I finally figured out that I want to stay that way. But that doesn't mean I'll forget you." Her grip loosened. Just slightly. "You won't." "No." I met those hollow eyes, and I saw what was behind them. Not a monster, not a demon, just a woman who died alone and couldn't let go of the pain. "I'll remember you. I'll make sure other people remember you too. You won't be erased. Not anymore." The cold began to recede. Margot's form flickered, wavered, like a flame in the wind. "You promise?" Her voice was small now, almost human. "I promise." She looked at me for a long moment. The bathroom seemed to exhale, the darkness lifting, ordinary daylight finally filtering through the window. And then, slowly, like fog burning off in the morning sun, Margot Ellis began to fade. Not disappearing, not erasing, just moving on. Letting go of something she'd held too tightly for too long. The last thing I saw was her mouth, no longer caught between smile and scream. Just a smile, sad, grateful, and finally at peace. Then she was gone, and I was standing alone in my bathroom, shaking, crying, alive. I kept my promise. It took weeks of research, phone calls to county offices, visits to archives that smelled like dust and forgotten things. But I found what I was looking for. Margot Ellis had been born in 1963 in a town about 40 miles north of the city. Her parents had died young, her father in a factory accident, her mother from what the records vaguely called complications of the heart. She'd been raised by an aunt who'd passed away while Margot was in college. No siblings, no children, no one to carry her memory forward. She'd worked as an accountant for a small firm that had gone out of business in 1999. Her colleagues, the few I could track down, remembered her as quiet and professional. "Kept to herself," one of them said, and I heard the echo of the newspaper article. The same words people always use to describe the ones they never really saw. I found her grave in the county cemetery, a flat stone marker with just her name and dates. No epitaph, no flowers, no sign that anyone had visited in 30 years. I bought a small arrangement, white lilies, because they seemed right, and placed them on the grass beside her stone. "I see you," I said again. "I remember you." The wind stirred the leaves overhead. Nothing else moved, but I felt something shift, some invisible weight lifting from the air. Whatever had been tethered to that apartment, to that bathroom, to the place where she'd died alone. Maybe it was finally free. I moved out of the Aldridge a month later, not because I was afraid anymore, but because the apartment had served its purpose. I'd come there to rebuild myself, to prove I wasn't the broken, crazy woman Marcus had tried to convince me I was. I'd done that. I'd faced something impossible and survived. I didn't need the apartment anymore. The new tenant was a young man, fresh out of college, excited about his first solo place. I thought about warning him, telling him what had happened, but what would I say? "There was a ghost in your bathroom," but I talked to her and she moved on. He'd think I was insane. And besides, I don't think Margot is there anymore. I think she finally found what she was looking for. I still think about her sometimes. Late at night, when I'm in the shower and that old feeling creeps up, that prickling certainty that someone is standing on the other side of the curtain. It happens less often now, but it happens. And when it does, I don't laugh at myself anymore. I don't dismiss it or rationalize it away. I pull back the curtain and I look. Not because I expect to see something. Because I've learned that sometimes the things we feel are real, even when everyone tells us they're not. Sometimes the presence we sense in the darkness is actually there, waiting to be acknowledged, waiting to be seen. I reconciled with my father last spring. That surprised me. I hadn't realized how much of my distance from him was connected to everything else, to the walls I'd built after Marcus, to the way I'd started disappearing from my own life. We're not close, not yet, but we talk now. We're trying. That's more than I would have said was possible a year ago. Elena flew out for my birthday. We didn't talk much about what happened at the Aldridge, but at one point she looked at me across the dinner table and said, "You're different now, stronger, like you finally decided to be here." She was right. That was exactly what I'd decided. Margot Ellis spent 30 years trapped between worlds because she'd convinced herself she didn't need anyone. She'd pushed people away, built walls so high no one could climb them, and when she died alone on that bathroom floor, There was no one left to remember her, no one to say her name, to acknowledge that she'd existed, to keep her tethered to a world that had already forgotten she was ever part of it. I could have ended up the same way. After Marcus, after the way he'd made me feel invisible and small, I was already halfway there, drifting through my life, going through the motions, telling myself that isolation was the same as independence. I was building the same walls Margot had built, and maybe, eventually, I would have disappeared behind them, just like she did. But I didn't, because I saw what happens when you let yourself fade, when you convince yourself that no one will notice if you're gone. Someone always notices. Maybe not right away, maybe not until it's too late. But loneliness leaves a mark on the world, a wound that doesn't heal just because the person who made it is gone. If you're reading this, I want you to understand something. That feeling you get sometimes, in the shower, in the dark, in the quiet moments when you're certain you're being watched, don't ignore it. Not because there's definitely something there, but because your instincts are trying to tell you something. Sometimes they're telling you about danger. Sometimes they're telling you about someone who needs to be seen. And sometimes, if you're honest with yourself, they're telling you about the walls you've built, the connections you've let wither, the ways you've started to disappear, so gradually you didn't even notice it happening. Pay attention to that feeling. Don't dismiss it. Don't rationalize it away. Look behind the curtain, because the things we refuse to see don't stop existing. They just wait in the darkness, growing stronger, until we have no choice but to face them. I faced mine. I saw the ghost in my bathroom, and I said her name, and I promised to remember her. And in doing that, I remembered myself too. Remembered that I was alive, that I wanted to stay that way, that connection wasn't weakness, and being seen wasn't something to fear. Margot Ellis is buried in a county cemetery on the north side of the city. If you're ever there, look for the stone with the lilies. Someone still brings them every few months. Someone still says her name. That's what I can give her. That's what any of us can give each other. The promise that when we're gone, we won't be forgotten. The assurance that we were here, that we mattered, that someone saw us and will carry us forward. I spent 3 years with a man who tried to convince me I was invisible. I spent 30 days with a ghost who proved I wasn't. I know which one I believe now, and every time I step into the shower, every time that old feeling creeps up my spine, I smile. Not because I'm not afraid, but because I know that even in the darkness, even in the moments when I feel most alone, I'm still here, still visible, still seen. And that's enough. That's everything. That's the only thing that ever really mattered.